Billionaire heir Su Bai had money, but his F-rank talent made him a school joke. Then a pay-to-win system finally bound to him. 1 million yuan unlocked a starter pack that transformed his useless foundation. Every larger payment could raise talent, realm, or technique mastery again. In days, his miserable 2.5 vitality exploded into martial master strength. His awakening then triggered a phenomenon beyond normal SSS grade talent. Rivals who mocked him suddenly realized money was feeding an impossible growth engine. Su Bai only needed enough cash to keep climbing. Su Bai had been waiting 2.5 years for this moment. Su Bai was not from this world. 2.5 years ago, Su Bai arrived in this place where martial arts and strength meant everything. Thousands of years ago, portals to another dimension opened, and endless beasts flooded their world. The planet known as Blue Star changed forever as spiritual energy returned. Modern weapons were useless against high-level beasts. It was not until a legendary figure known as the Sword Saint appeared that the tide turned. With a single sword, he wiped out the beast hordes and established the peaceful era they live in now. The Sword Saint vanished after that, and the beasts stopped launching massive invasions. Even though 1,000 years had passed, his name was etched into everyone's heart. The new generation of geniuses was not enough to stop the skirmishes at the borders. While the top-tier powerhouses were aging, there was a massive gap in their fighting force. None of that had mattered to him until now. When Su Bai first crossed over, he thought he would be a protagonist, slaying enemies and rising to the top. Instead, Su Bai spent 2.5 years, waiting for a system that never came. He was stuck with a martial arts talent that was absolute trash. The only thing that kept him going was his family. His parents owned a company worth hundreds of billions that spanned the entire province. His father was a high-level martial king, and his mother was a high-level martial master. In this world, the ranks were clear. Apprentice, martial artist, master king, grandmaster, great-grandmaster, martial emperor, and martial god. As the son of two powerful experts, Su Bai was a certified embarrassment. His parents had pumped him full of rare herbs, expensive medicinal baths, and top-tier supplements. Even after spending hundreds of millions, his vitality score was a pathetic 2.5. The minimum score to get into a standard university was 7.0. With his score, Su Bai would be lucky to get into a bottom-tier vocational school that accepted anything with a heartbeat. His parents had hired every alchemist and expert they knew, but nothing worked. With the global martial arts exam just months away, Su Bai had given up. Su Bai's ready to just go home and inherit the family business. But now the system was here. If there was one thing Su Bai was not short on, it was money. Top up, Su Bai shouted in his mind. Su Bai was so excited that he did not realize he had actually twitched in his seat. His homeroom teacher, Mr. The exam is months away. This world belongs to the strong. Li was a low-level martial king. He was not afraid of offending a rich kid like him. He had been the one to let him into this elite class as a favor, even though the average vitality. He had watched him give up and turn into a slacker who spent his nights partying. He wanted to give him one last wake-up call. Su Bai snapped out of his daze and stood up. Su Bai got distracted, but he had made up his mind. His goal is to get into the top universities in the country. A few students started shaking, trying to hold back their laughter, but one person did not bother hiding it. A loud mocking laugh erupted from the front row. It was Su Fei. He looked like a gentleman, but he was a snake. His family's business competed with his, and they always lost to his parents. Naturally, he took every chance he could to kick him. A dog's mouth never utters ivory. Su Bai replied calmly, basically calling him a mutt. Su Fei blinked, his smile faltering as he tried to process the insult. Beside him, a girl leaned in to whisper the meaning. One of his lackeys leaned in to translate for him. Several students could not hold back their laughter, snorting loudly. Su Fei's face turned a violent shade of purple. Su Bai leaned back, his expression casual. Su was calling out whoever decides to sit in the seat. Su Fei lunged forward, but he stopped himself. He remembered his sharp tongue from the past few years. He had never won a verbal sparring match with him. Su Fei took a deep breath, a malicious glint entering his eyes. It just so happens the awakening ceremony is the day after tomorrow. He plastered a fake mocking smile on his face. Their great young master Su is headed for the top of the world. Surely he would not mind giving a lowly student like him some pointers, right? Everyone? In the past, Su Bai might have ignored them to avoid the public humiliation. But things were different now. Su Bai had the pay-to-win system. As long as Su Bai spent money, he got stronger. and money was the one thing he had in abundance. Crushing Su Fei would be like stepping on an ant. Su Bai won't refuse, he said, his voice cutting through the noise. But a simple duel is boring. Su raised the stakes by placing a rare grade 5 marrow-cleansing pill against Su Fei's breakthrough pill, stunning everyone who understood its value. It could strip away impurities and transform a mediocre talent into a genius overnight. In comparison, his breakthrough pill was only grade 3. Even though it helped the martial master reach the martial king realm with an 80% success rate, its value was its. Su Fei looked like he'd been slapped. He burst into a manic laugh. Su Bai don't want him backing out when he loses. Li stepped forward, his brow furrowed. Su Fei is already a primary martial artist with a vitality of 23. He was trying to give him an out. To him beating Su Fei was as likely as a pig flying. It was impossible. But Su Bai did not blink. "It's settled," teacher said, tossing the pill to him. Su Bai don't want anyone forgetting the deal later. As a transmigrator with a system, if Su Bai could not beat a low-level student, he might as well jump off. The moment the final bell rang, Su Bai bolted home. Su Bai retreated to his room in their massive luxury villa, locking the door and ignoring the beautiful maid who had. Su Bai needed to see his status. A holographic screen shimmered in front of his eyes. Pay-to-win system named Su Bai. Realm Trainee 2.5 Vitality. Shop-locked inventory Onyx Newbie Gift Pack. Su Bai ignored the insult about his F-rank talent. After 2.5 years of waiting, Su Bai finally had the system he expected. And even its smug response could not ruin his excitement. A voice echoed in his head, sounding strangely smug. Su Bai coughed, feeling a bit embarrassed. Don't make it sound weird. Su Bai studied the 1 million credit deduction on his phone. 1 million could feed a normal family for a lifetime. While in this world, strength was the currency that mattered. Talent upgraded to a rank. Special top-tier fire talent. Realm upgraded to primary martial artist. A surge of heat exploded in his chest. Su Bai felt his bones cracking and reforming. His veins widening as pure energy flooded his system talent. A+, Realm Primary Martial Artist Vitality 10. Cultivation Dao Enlightenment Script. Su Bai had really done it. No wonder his progress had been so slow before. Trying to cultivate with F-rank talent was like trying to fill a bucket with a hole in the bottom. But now the hole was gone. The game had changed completely. His old cultivation efficiency had been miserable. But the upgraded talent now retained energy that once escaped almost entirely. The rest of it could not be absorbed by his body at all, simply drifting away into the air and wasting his time. Su Bai understood then that the 1 million credits he just spent was the best investment of his life. This cheat system was incredible. If Su Bai had bound this system earlier, he would not have wasted so much. Su Bai thought about the billions he had squandered over the years on useless things. If Su Bai had pumped all that money into this system, how strong would he be right now? Su Bai had spent years being looked down on as trash. Now that Su Bai finally had talent, he understood exactly what he had to do. Su Bai wanted to know what it felt like to be a genius. Su Bai sat cross-legged on his bed and began to circulate the Chongchun script. Over the last few thousand years, humanity had developed countless cultivation methods. The Chongchun script was one of the modern ones. While ancient methods existed, they had been refined over a millennium to create much more powerful techniques. Cultivation ranks were divided into yellow, black, earth, and heaven. His Chongchun script was an earth rank method. His father had spent a fortune and used every connection he had to get it for him. In the outside world, a manual like this would start at 100 million credits. Resources were always kept in the hands of the elite. For normal people, the only way to get a high-level manual was through the martial exams. Anything better had to be earned with military merit on the front lines. Money alone could not buy it. As Su Bai activated the script, a warm current of spiritual energy began to flow through his limbs. It felt so good. Su Bai almost groaned out loud. No wonder people were obsessed with martial arts. This feeling was better than any luxury Su Bai had ever bought. His new A-rank talent was already showing its worth. In the past, it took him several breaths just to complete one cycle of energy. Now, Su Bai finished a full cycle in half a breath. Back then, his vitality barely budged. Every cycle made Su Bai stronger. His panel confirmed a primary martial artist realm with vitality already above 10, proving the upgrade was real. Su Bai had gained exactly 0.01 vitality in just one cycle. The system's upgrade felt completely natural, as if Su Bai had earned that strength through years of hard work. Su Bai could feel the difference in his muscles. Even a 0.01 increase meant Su Bai could probably pack a few more kilograms of force into his punches. In this world, a person with a vitality of 1 was a standard trainee, capable of punching with about 100. A primary martial artist like him with 10 vitality should have a base punch of 200 kilogram. Intermediate was 20 vitality, and a senior martial artist reached 50. By the time someone reached the peak of the martial artist rank at 100 vitality, they could strike with 1,000. A genius could use special techniques and talents to multiply their power. A primary martial artist with a good technique could fight an intermediate one to a standstill. If they had a special talent on top of that, they could easily crush people ranks above them. That was why Su Fei felt so confident in mocking him. He had a special talent. Even though his was the lowest rank, it still made him better than any normal person. Special talents only appeared in 1 out of every few thousand people. Thanks to his A-rank talent, his body was absorbing energy, even when Su Bai was not actively trying. Su Bai glanced at the system panel again and froze. His eyes widened as Su Bai studied the talent section. It said talent a plus. That little plus sign changed everything. Su Bai studied the screen, his heart hammering against his ribs. Su Bai thought the gift pack just gave him a static A-rank talent. Su Bai had completely underestimated this system. If A-rank felt this good, what would S-rank be like? In the last 1,000 years, S-rank talents were incredibly rare. Every year, out of all the millions of students taking the global martial exams, only a few dozen would be. Last year in Zhang province, they had hundreds of shranks, only 1 SS rank, and absolutely 0 SSS ranks. Su Bai understood he was holding a ticket to the very top. His city only had 2 S-rank talents in its entire history. In a province of hundreds of millions, only 2 people awakened at that level every year. Then there were special talents. They could appear in a total loser or a once-in-a-century genius. Even if a weakling got one, they could fight people way above their level. These talents were not just for fighting either. Some became master alchemists, blacksmiths, or beastaces. For thousands of years, humans had tried to study these powers, but they remained a mystery. Parents would spend their entire life savings just to bump their child up a single rank, and it never worked. Su Bai studied that plus sign, his finger trembling. Su Bai took a deep breath and tapped it. The system wanted 100 million to upgrade him to S rank. The starter pack was 1 million, but a single upgrade cost 100 million. Luckily, his cheapskate father was worth a 100 billion. If Su Bai were anyone else, he would never be able to afford this system. The system noticed his hesitation and offered a return package. Another major recharge would upgrade his talent and push his realm higher. Recharge 100 million now to upgrade to S rank and reach the ultimate martial artist realm. Was this system run by a corporate scammer? Su Bai groaned, but his hand moved on its own. His phone buzzed with a bank alert. The money was gone, but a rush of power surged through his veins. His status panel refreshed. Realm Ultimate Martial Artist. The plus sign remained. SS rank cost 300 million. SSS rank cost 500 million, and 1 billion opened an even higher mortal grade tier. It was a rank beyond SSS, a unique level that shouldn't even exist. By the time Su Bai was done, he had burned through nearly 2 billion. His personal savings were almost completely drained, leaving him with just a few million for pocket money. This system was not just a talent booster. It was a black hole for cash. Su Bai had reached the top. Su Bai was the only person in the world with immortal grade talent. Su Bai sat down and started to meditate, curious to see what this level of power felt like. The sun was just beginning to peek over the horizon when Su Bai opened his eyes. In just one night, Su Bai had jumped from a mid-level martial artist to a high-level one. His blood chi had skyrocketed to over 200. Even with immortal talent, that shouldn't have been possible. Then, Su Bai remembered the other item from the starter pack, the Dao Enlightenment technique. It was an Earth-rank cultivation method in this world. Combining an immortal talent with an Earth-rank technique was like putting a jet engine on a race car. If Su Bai faced Su Fei now, he would not even need to throw a punch. Su Bai could crush him with one finger. Su Bai had bragged about getting into a top university, and now he could actually do it. There were 3 elite schools in China. First was Peking University, the place with the best resources and teachers. Second was the National Defense University, run by the military for those who wanted to fight on the front lines. Then there was Shanghai University. It was technically ranked 3rd, but everyone knew its actual strength was #1 in the country. If not, Even an SSS-ranked genius would be kicked to the curb. Every graduate from Shanghai University became a legend. Even the lowest-ranking teachers, there were grandmasters. The official talent awakening ceremony was in 2 days. It was not just a ceremony, though. It determined who got to compete in the Secret Realm competition. This was a massive event where different provinces fought for resources. Each city would send its top 10 students into a secret realm to hunt monsters for points. Before the system, 2.5 blood chi made the competition impossible. Now Su Bai had talent, technique, and a real reason to win. After all, the system was still hungry for money, and Su Bai needed to find a way to keep feeding it. Now that Su Bai was broke, the system did not give a damn about him. Su Bai still had not figured out everything it could do yet. There was no instruction manual, so Su Bai had to stumble through it on his own. The mall tab on the interface was still locked tight, so Su Bai gave up on that for now. Su Bai was officially a pauper. Even if the system had 1,000 other god-tier functions, Su Bai could only stand by and watch with empty. Still, looking at his current setup, Su Bai was not doing too bad. A divine talent paired with a top-tier fire element talent put him ahead of 99.99% of the people. Being a high-level martial artist was good, but it was not a guaranteed lock for first place. Su Bai could not risk an unexpected upset. If Su Bai was going to the global competition, he was going there for the gold. Su Bai ticked up his phone, called the school, and took a day off to remain inside and cultivate. Back at school, his teacher, Mr. He thought Su Bai would finally snap under the pressure. Yesterday, Su Bai was talking crazy about getting into a top-tier university, and today he was skipping class. His blood chi was 2.5. At best, Su Bai could maybe scrape into a standard undergraduate program if he worked hard. But the top 3, that was a fairy tale. Even Shanghai University, which did not care about rank, only took maybe 1 or 2 students a year. The odds of them picking him were 0. Li actually muttered to himself that if Su Bai got into any of those 3, he'd eat his desk right then. Su Bai did not care about desks. Su Bai was too busy feeling the power surge through him. By the time Su Bai finished his session the next morning, he was just 1 step away from becoming a marshal. With a divine talent and an earth-grade cultivation technique, Su Bai felt himself growing stronger every single second. Su Bai finally understood why those old cultivators stayed in seclusion for years. His blood chi was sitting at over 400. Su Bai figured that would be enough. Su Bai was agonizingly close to the 500 mark, which would officially make him a martial master. Going from a loser to a master in 3 days was a feat that would break the history books. Before Su Bai left for school, he checked the only combat technique he had, the Yuan Yang Slash. As expected, it was a high-level skill. Heaven grade, low rank. Techniques were split into 5 levels of mastery. Initial, small success, great success, perfection, and microcontrol. Usually, it took months just to reach the initial stage of a heaven grade technique. Su Bai discovered another system feature, pay-to-win training. To jump straight to microcontrol for a heaven-grade skill cost about a 100 million yuan. His remaining few million only got him to great success, leaving him completely bankrupt again. But, as the knowledge of the Yuan Yang flooded his brain, Su Bai understood it was worth every cent. Most people would kill to master a heaven-grade technique for a few million. Su Bai checked his phone and saw several missed calls from his parents. Su Bai would have been so deep in cultivation, he had not even noticed. Su Bai studied the dial screen for a long time, his thumb hovering over the button. Su Bai showed the world his high-level martial artist strength first. It would be better to call them with good news after Su Bai shocked everyone. Su Bai walked out of the villa, unaware that every move he made was being watched. The maid in the house was not just a servant. She was a bodyguard hired by his parents. They had plenty of enemies in the business world who were not above targeting their son. His old man had spent a fortune to hire her. She was a primary martial king. If people knew a failure like him had a martial king protecting him, they'd lose their minds. Once Su Bai was gone, she pulled out a phone and reported everything. She detailed his behavior over the last 2 days, the school drama, and even his bet with Su Fei. At the school gates, a chubby guy was waving his arms around frantically. This was Wang Fugui, his childhood best friend. Wang Fugui was the youngest of the trio. His family was filthy rich, just like his name suggested. The awakening ceremony is today. Wang Fugui continued looking more upset than Su Bai was. Su Bai swore he wanted to punch that smug look right off his face. He paused, looking at him with genuine concern. He's already a primary martial artist. Su Bai heard he even started learning an earth-grade technique. It's just a marrow cleansing pill. Then Su Bai let a tiny sliver of his high-level martial artist aura leak out. The words died in his throat. He looked at him like he was seeing a ghost. He was a primary martial artist with a blood chi of around 17. But the pressure coming off him made his hair stand on end. Even the mid-level students in their class did not make him feel this much danger. He could not wrap his head around it. Su Bai was the guy with 2.5 blood chi. Either Su Bai would achieve the impossible in a few days, or he would been hiding his true power for years. Wang Fugui chose to believe the latter. The alternative was just too insane. He looked at him with newfound awe, wondering how Su Bai had managed to endure all those years of insults while hiding. Su Bai watched Wang Fugui struggle to process the reality of his strength. In his eyes, Su Bai was the ultimate master of disguise. He clearly thought Su Bai would have been playing the role of a lazy, rich, second-generation heir for years just to hide. He looked at him with a mix of awe and slight resentment. Wang Fugui whispered, his eyes gleaming. Su Bai understood a guy born with heavenly omens could not be a talentless loser. Su Bai had leaked his aura on purpose. Today was the testing ceremony, and his strength was going to come out sooner or later. Su Bai wanted to give his friend a heads up so he would not spend the whole day worrying that he was. The realization hit hard, Wang Fugui muttered, unable to find better words. Su Fei is so screwed. Su Bai couldn't wait to see his face when he realizes he's picking a fight with a high-level martial artist. Li started announcing the rules for the ceremony. He told them this would be the highest spec test in history. The Provincial Martial Arts Association was even sending experts to help them awaken their hidden talents. Usually, this happened a month before the exams. But this year the schedule had been pushed up. It was a massive opportunity. The rewards for the top 10 students were 10 times higher than previous years. Li shouted, his voice full of passion. The lower-level students were buzzing with excitement. Even if their current cultivation was low, a high-grade talent awakening could change their lives overnight. Everyone was dreaming of hitting the jackpot and awakening an S-grade talent to soar to the top. Li looked at the fired-up crowd with satisfaction. Then his eyes landed on him. Su Bai was such bored out of his mind. Su Bai had heard enough corporate chicken soup speeches in his past life to last 10 lifetimes. He thought Su Bai was acting strange because of the pressure. He hoped Su Bai could at least awaken a D-grade talent, so his parents could use their wealth to push him. To him, his 2.5 blood chi meant the chances of a high-grade awakening were basically zero. Nearby, his classmates started whispering about him. Another replied, he's got that marrow cleansing pill, but he's using it as a bet against Su Fei. If he loses that, he's finished. Su Fei overheard them and sneered loudly. Talent. The guy has a blood chi of 2.5 after 2 years of training. Su Fei doubt any decent university will even take him. He talks big about the top 3 schools, but even Su Fei struggled to reach those. A big mouth and rich parents. Su Bai would rather jump off a building than see he awaken anything above a D grade. Wang Fugui sat next to him, looking at Su Fei like he was watching a circus clown. He wanted to scream the truth, but he held back to keep his secret. He just pulled out his phone and quietly started recording Su Fei's trash talk, grinning like a maniac. He was building a library of evidence for the ultimate humiliation. Soon, the announcement came over the speakers. It was time to head to the field. Li said, his tone serious. Today they find out who's a dragon and who's a worm. Follow him to the field. They followed him out to the track. A massive awakening platform had been built in the center. A man stood there holding a crystal ball, wearing a 3-star silver badge on his chest. He was a high-level martial master from the Provincial Association. Representatives from the Alchemist Association were all lined up in the VIP seats, hoping to scout new geniuses. A student named Defei was the first to go up. He looked terrified and excited all at once. Defei walked up to the platform looking like a nervous wreck. Su Bai could tell he was hoping for a miracle. Maybe a shot at a second-tier university if things went well. The martial master did not waste time. He told the kid to place his hand on the crystal and focus on absorbing the spiritual energy. It carried across the entire field, so he would not have to repeat the instructions for every student. Defei followed the orders. A faint, weak light flickered inside the crystal. Next, the master announced. A C grade was actually decent for a regular student. It meant he had a real chance at those mid to high-level universities. People were whispering about how lucky he was, saying their families would set off fireworks for a week, if they. Su Bai just shook his head. But to these people, it was a golden ticket. The line moved fast. Su Bai got a D grade. The next kid got an E. Then another C. Then a B. Then the name everyone was waiting for echoed through the speakers. Next, Chu Yu, the school goddess. She was already a high-level martial artist. People were betting she'd hit at least an A grade, maybe even an S. Some of Su Fei's lackeys started shouting that she was their boss's girlfriend and that everyone should watch their mouths. It made his skin crawl. Before she stepped up, Su Bai saw her eyes searching the crowd. She was looking for him. She looked worried, probably thinking about the insane bet Su Bai would made with Su Fei. With so many people in class too, while him standing in the back with Wang Fugui, she could not find him. She bit her lip, suppressed her anxiety, and walked onto the stage. The martial master did not even look up. He was busy recording data, looking bored. He'd seen a dozen kids, and the best so far was a single B grade. He was worried about his own performance metrics. He needed an SS or at least a few A grades to look good to his superiors. Then Chu Yu touched the crystal. The world seemed to stop. A violent purple light exploded from the ball mixed with streaks of shimmering gold. A massive pillar of light shot 100 meters into the sky. The martial master nearly fell off his chair. This is SS great. The principal did not wait. He blurred across the stage, instantly appearing at Chu Yuyu's side to protect her. A high-pitched, crystal-clear phoenix cry tore through the air. A small glowing bird emerged from her body, spiraling up the pillar of light. It grew larger and larger until a massive phoenix, hundreds of meters wide, circled the sky. He had to lean against the platform just to stay upright. Every Martial King level expert in the VIP section moved at once, forming a human shield around her. They were looking at a legend, a phoenix appearing at an awakening. That was not just talent. That was a sign from the heavens. The master finally found his voice, though it was trembling. Chu Yuyu's SS grade talent, unknown special trait. Because the phoenix had appeared, the crystal ball could not even categorize her special ability. Only the top 3 universities in the country would have the tools to figure out what she was truly capable. An SS grade was a guaranteed ticket to the top schools. She was a future martial emperor, maybe even a martial deity. The city leaders were already planning how to suck up to the Chu family. Su Bai was so jealous, one of the old experts muttered. The old expert is going to come out of seclusion just to brag about this. First a brilliant son, now a granddaughter like this. Su Bai heard a rumor. Doesn't this girl have an arranged marriage with that kid from the Su family? The Su family kid? A dragon does not marry a worm. Su Bai stood in the back watching the chaos. The worm they were talking about was currently stronger than anyone on that stage. Everyone knew the kid from the Su family was a once-in-a-millennium failure. Even with a mountain of family resources, he'd barely scraped together a blood chi value of 2.5. He was a waste of space. But now everything had changed. Chu Yu had just awakened an SS grade talent. They were from 2 different worlds now. A verbal promise from years ago meant nothing now. A dragon does not mate with a worm. On the stage, the golden light faded. Chu Yu opened her eyes, feeling the surge of power in her veins. She had hoped for an A grade, but this was beyond her wildest dreams. She felt a strange, intimate connection to the spiritual energy floating in the air. It felt like family. With just a single thought, she knew she could pull all that energy into her body at once. Before she could even process the change, a swarm of experts surrounded her. The Martial Artist Association reps were shouting, promising her unlimited resources and master-level mentors if she just signed. They were fighting like children over a prize. These were powerful martial kings, men as strong as her own father, losing their cool just to get her attention. The principal finally stepped in, pushing the crowd back. He reminded them that the top 3 universities in the country had already been notified and were on their way. Chuyu was destined for greatness that moved far beyond this city. Down in the square, students were losing their minds. They had seen a legendary phoenix manifest in the sky. To them, Chu Yu was now a goddess. Some were jealous. Others were heartbroken, knowing she was now completely out of their league. Su Fei watched her from the crowd, nodding to himself. Her talent exceeded his expectations, but that only made him want to conquer her more. Su Bai stood at the back with Wang Fugui, watching the spectacle. His own talent was SSS great, something beyond the divine. Wang Fugui, however, looked like he'd seen a ghost. He looked at him, then back at the stage, realizing both of his childhood friends were monsters while he was. He looked miserable, wondering why he was the only one left behind in the trash category. The Awakening Master on stage was beaming. Having an SSG student on his watch meant a massive promotion and a huge bonus. He quickly called for the next students. Su C-grade talent. Next. The ceremony moved fast. Aside from Chuyo, they had one A grade and a few B grades. Then it was time for his class. Class 2. Wang Fugui clenched his fists, praying to the heavens for a miracle, so he would not have to hide his face. Chu Yu stepped off the stage. Instead of returning to her class, she started walking toward them. The crowd went wild. The guys in his class started fixing their hair, thinking she was coming for them. Some joked that she was coming for Su Fei. One guy even shouted that he'd eat dirt if she was actually looking for Su Bai. Su Fei stood tall, waiting for her with a smirk, though Su Bai could see the flicker of anxiety in his. Wang Fugui nudged him with his elbow, grinning like an idiot. He whispered that the look on Su Fei's face would be priceless once he realized the truth. Su Bai raised an eyebrow as his childhood friend and secret fiancé approached. She had just become the most sought-after genius in the city. She knew that old him was a failure. Yet, she was still walking straight toward him. Su Bai remembered how Chu Yo-Yo used to follow him around like a lost puppy when they were kids. She was always begging him to play with her. Neither of them ever tried to break it. Wang Fui knew the secret too. He just envied his luck. He used to joke about how much he disliked her when they were toddlers back, when she was just. But Su Bai was the one who always brought her along to play. The three of them grew up thick as thieves, wearing out the same playground equipment. Nobody expected Chu Yu to grow up into such a breathtaking beauty. She became the kind of girl who could stop traffic with a single look. On top of that, her martial cultivation skyrocketed. Wang Fugui and Su Bai ended up in class 2. While she was so famous and they were seen as average, they stopped talking to her in public to avoid the gossip. Seeing her walk toward him now, a thought crossed his mind. Was she here to break off the engagement? Su Bai would read enough web novels to know the trope. The loser main character gets a cheat system. The villain mocks him, and the fiancé shows up to dump him. It's the perfect setup for a revenge arc. Honestly, part of him hoped Su Bai was wrong. A woman like her was impossible to find twice. Chu Yu reached the class 2 section and scanned the crowd looking for someone. They all swarmed her, hoping to make a good impression on the school's new genius. They knew they did not stand a chance with her, but they wanted to be in her orbit. Chu Yu looked overwhelmed. She bit her lip, looking incredibly delicate and beautiful, like a creature from another world. Is Su Bai here? She asked softly. Wait, who did she say? Someone whispered. Did Su Bai hear that right, Zubat? Then the explosion happened. The school waste was being sought out by the SS grade goddess. One guy reminded everyone about the student who promised to eat dirt if this happened. Su Fei's lackeys looked like been slapped. They could not understand why she'd want anything to do with a failure like him. His eyes were bloodshot with pure, unadulterated rage. Su Fei had to leave. He marched up to the stage, channeling all that jealousy into the awakening stone. He glared at the crystal ball, his knuckles white. A faint purple light flickered for a second, then vanished. He looked disappointed for a heartbeat, but then a burst of flame erupted from his palm. He manipulated the fire with ease, a cruel smirk returning to his face. Su Fei's G-grade talent. Advanced Special Fire Element, the proctor announced. After an SS grade, an S grade was the cherry on top. His promotion was guaranteed now. He looked at the students like they were bags of money. Su Fei walked off the stage, his confidence restored. He looked at him with cold, calculating eyes. In his mind, Su Bai was still the loser, with a blood chi of 2.5. He probably thought his S-grade talent gave him the right to crush him in their duel. That's why he hated him so much. He could not stand that Su Bai, someone he deemed inferior, had the girl he wanted. He thought his talent could bridge the gap between them. Looking for him? Su Bai used her old childhood nickname. Su Bai had not called her that since middle school, but it felt right. Chu Yu stiffened when she heard it. She turned toward his voice, her eyes softening as they landed on him. Brother Su Bai, she whispered. Su Bai could see the memories flashing in her eyes. Su Bai remembered that year in elementary school when she was kidnapped by his parents' business rivals. She'd been locked in a dark, damp room, terrified out of her mind. The police and their parents could not find her fast enough. Su Bai used every trick he understood and some gadgets his parents gave him for protection. Su Bai pulled her out of the hands of several professional martial artists. Nobody knew how scared she really was back then. But when Su Bai grabbed her hand and ran, he became her entire world. Su Bai was the light that pulled her out of the dark. Those martial artists never saw it coming. Over time, the memory faded into a blur. As a transmigrator, Su Bai had no idea. The memories Su Bai inherited from the original Su Bai did not contain a single trace of that day. If Su Bai had known they had this kind of history, he would not have spent a second worrying about a broken. This girl was not some cold socialite. She was a pure-hearted childhood friend. Wang Fugui and Su Bai had moved on easily. But Chu Yu never forgot. She never forgot the crushing despair of that dark room, or the boy who reached in to pull her out. That was the real reason she never objected to their engagement. Later, when Su Bai became known as a once-in-a-century loser, she did not leave. She wanted to protect him. It was a classic cheesy story of a hero saving a beauty, and she had decided to entrust her entire life to him because of it. Even now, having awakened an SSR talent, her only thought was that the stronger she became, the better she could. Chu Yu trembled at the sound of her old nickname. Tears threatened to fall at any moment. She looked so fragile that anyone watching would feel an instinctive urge to protect her. Su Bai, on the other hand, was completely thrown off. Su Bai just called her snot nose for a bit of nostalgia. Su Bai felt the atmosphere shift instantly. Every guy in the vicinity was suddenly radiating pure killing intent toward him. They were cracking their knuckles and glaring. If Su Bai did not give a damn good explanation for making their goddess cry, he was going to become public enemy. His ancestors were not lying about that. Brother Bai, this is not right. Wang Fugui whispered, leaning in close. Su Bai called her a name from 3rd grade, and she turned into a waterfall. Su Bai had to fix this and fast. Su Bai, promise. She looked at him, taking in his panicked, helpless expression. Suddenly, she let out a small and burst into a beautiful smile. Seeing him like this seemed to put her at ease. Ever since she heard Su Bai challenged Su Fei, she had been worried sick. Combined with his absence from school yesterday, she thought Su Bai might have done something desperate. But looking at him now, Su Bai seemed perfectly fine. Su Bai had let her worry all this time for nothing. Instead, she gave him a sweet, radiant smile. The sudden shift in her mood left him dazed. Su Bai could only offer a slight smile and a nod. She was not here to break things off at all. In fact, her attitude was beyond friendly. She called him brother Su Bai. Su Bai had not heard that in years. With his experience from 2 lifetimes, Su Bai understood the truth. This girl had feelings for him all along. Back when Su Bai thought he was a cultivation failure, he had intentionally distanced himself from her. She was a genius, and Su Bai did not want to drag her down. Su Bai wanted her to focus on her path. It seemed his noble sacrifice had not changed her heart at all. She had awakened an SS grade talent, but now it was not too late. Chu Yu turned and headed back to her class, leaving the crowd in a state of collective shock. It took a few seconds for the noise to explode. Can someone explain why the school goddess just went over to cheer for Su Bai and that nickname? There's no way she knows him like that. Is the rumor true? No. Su Bai couldn't accept this. This hurts more than dying. The guys who were laughing at him earlier were now silent, their hearts shattered by a single smile. They did not dare insult him to his face like Su Fei did. After all, Su Bai was still a rich heir with a massive family fortune. But the envy was suffocating. Even the powerful martial masters sitting on the viewing platform were exchanging confused glances. So, one of them muttered, "The rumor about the Chu girl and the Su boy having an engagement, it's actually real." The martial kings on the platform were whispering among themselves. One of them, a man known as the Dance King, leaned forward with a sharp glint in his eyes. He confirmed that the rumors were true. It looked like the engagement between him and Chu Yu was not just a business deal. He called it a tragedy. He could not believe a beautiful flower like Chu Yu was being planted in the cow dung of the Su family. The others immediately started teasing him, threatening to tell his wife if he did not pay them hush money. A cold, dissenting voice cut through the humor. One master pointed out that Chu Yu was now an SSRA genius. Su Bai, on the other hand, was not even a primary martial artist. In his eyes, Su Bai was just a waste of space who would hold her back. In this world, strength was everything. Since Chu Yu had awakened such a high talent, they were effectively living in 2 different worlds. Next, Wang Fugui, the proctor shouted. Su Fei had already stepped down from the stage. He did not even bother glancing his way this time. To him, Su Bai was already a dead man. Now that he had an S-grade talent, his perspective had shifted. He felt that a loser like him, who probably would not even hit D-grade, was not worth his energy. He saw him as nothing more than a stepping stone for his future glory. Wang Fugui was shaking. He looked at him, his eyes wide with terror. He begged him to pray for him. He said that since Chuyuju Susi were both monsters, he could not afford to slack off. If he failed now, he'd never be able to keep up with them. Just go, Su Bai said, giving him a pat on the shoulder. His system had reacted the moment Su Fei awakened his talent. A notification had popped up, offering to copy a high-level fire talent for 10 million yuan. That's when Su Bai understood his system could replicate the special talents of others. When Su Bai studied Wang Fugui, a similar prompt appeared. It was not a high-level talent, but it was something much rarer. Wang Fugui walked up to the stage like he was heading to his execution. He stared at the awakening sphere and muttered a prayer. He literally offered to trade 100 years of Su Fei's life for a top-tier talent. Wang Fugui's face lit up. He thought Su Fei's sacrifice had worked. A streak of brilliant gold flashed through the crystal. Within a 1,000-meter radius of the school, every animal stopped moving. They all turned their heads toward the awakening stage. Inside the school, pets and stray animals let out a synchronized strange cry. It sounded like they were welcoming a king. The martial kings on the platform bolted upright. Their chairs scraped against the floor as they stared in disbelief. This was more shocking than an SS grade awakening. And it's at least high level. It's a top-tier beast-taming talent. Another shouted, "Who is this kid?" The awakening officer was vibrating with excitement. A top-tier beast tamer was as valuable as an SS-grade combatant and far rarer. The last person to awaken this talent was now a pillar of humanity, a legend at Peking University. The officer realized his career was made. He could retire on the bonuses from this one student and never deal with his boss again. Wang Fugui, SG Raid talent, top-tier beast tamer. The announcement hit the crowd like a missile. He gripped his fist so hard his nails dug into his palms, drawing blood. He kept muttering that it was impossible. He could not understand how a fat primary-level student like Wang Fugui could surpass him. He wanted answers, but nobody was listening to him anymore. Wang Fugui had just changed his destiny. Nobody understood the potential of a beast tamer better than Su Fei did. Su Bai watched Wang Fugui standing there, muttering to himself with a look of pure joy. He was actually bragging about how he planned to use his top-tier beast-taming talent. He said he finally understood his calling to hide in the back like a coward while his beasts did all. Told him a top-tier talent was meant for being a professional slacker. The martial kings on the platform had calmed down, but they looked speechless. If the legendary beast tamer at Peking University heard this kid's plan, he'd probably crack Wang Fugui's skull open just. And Scrade talent combined with a top-tier special ability. Wang Fugui was basically a guaranteed future martial emperor. In this world, a dead genius is not a genius at all. Principal Chun. Who is this student? The representative from the Martial Arts Association asked. He was curious, but he did not try to recruit him. A small city association could not hold a giant like Wang Fugui. They'd have to settle for trying to recruit Su Fei or the A-grade students later. His reputation as a cultivation waste was famous in Tianhai City. His parents' friends had even suggested they try for a second child, since Su Bai was such a lost cause. Without protection, Su Bai would have been a lamb in a wolf den. He's the son of the Wang family, currently a primary martial artist. The officials nodded, realizing he had inherited his father's talent. The Wang family's rise was now inevitable. Wang Fugui hopped off the stage and skipped back to his side. He looked like a peacock. Su Bai never thought he would see the day. Su Bai covered his face with his hand and shook his head. Su Bai wondered how he ended up being friends with this show-off. Su Bai reached out and gave him a sharp knock on the head. Wang Fu just grinned, looking a bit silly, and finally settled down. He was content being his #1 follower. People wondered why a genius like him listened to him. But it went back to when they were kids. Su Bai had always been the one with the ideas, the one leading the way. Even now, Wang Fugui firmly believed Su Bai was stronger than him. He thought that even if Su Bai had a weak talent, he would find a way to make it deadly. Of course, he did not know that without his system, Su Bai really would have been a complete loser. Next, the line moved quickly. Then, finally his name was called. Everyone wanted to see what the legendary waste of Tianhai City would pull off. They knew Su Bai had spent 3 years failing, that his blood chi was a pathetic 2.5. Last time Su Bai checked, they whispered about all the resources he had wasted. Money that could have trained a dozen martial masters. To them, Su Bai was just a guy who got lucky with his birth. Old Chun, is this that famous failure? The vice chairman of the Martial Arts Association asked. He looked at him squinting. He seemed confused because Su Bai did not look like a nervous wreck or a lazy rich kid. Su Bai looked calm, too calm. Yes, that's him, Principal Chin. He did not have high hopes. He knew his history better than anyone. He figured that even with all the treasures his parents bought him, Su Bai might hit Earth-grade talent at best. The awakening officer did not even look at him. He was bored already thinking about his retirement bonus from Wang Fugui's awakening. In all of human history, only one person had ever awakened a divine-grade talent, the legendary Sword Saint. Until now, the only one. Su Bai wondered if this machine could even handle what he was about to give it. Su Bai reached out and pressed his palm against the cool surface of the sphere. At that exact moment, far away on the road, from the capital to Tonghai City, the sky began. Three figures streaked across the sky, moving at speeds that shattered the sound barrier. These were grandmasters, and they were not hiding their overwhelming pressure. One of them radiated an aura even more terrifying than the others. He looked toward the woman leading the group. It does not matter why Su Bai was here, Vice Dean Zhu replied, her voice ice-cold. Su Bai had already set his sights on this student. Their National Defense University is a great choice, too. These three represented the top tier of human education, the three great me's. At their level, they were not just schools. They were the pillars of humanity. Su Bai was taking this student, Vice Dean Zhu stated firmly. She glanced at the two men with undisguised contempt. She was a martial king, outranking them in both power and status. If she truly wanted the student with the Phoenix talent, they did not stand a chance. Even a 1% chance was worth the trip. Another one? The other two snapped their heads toward him. The big man looked like he regretted opening his mouth. He could have kept the news to himself and snatched a second genius. But it was too late now. Su Bai just got word from his contacts. In that same location in Tianhai City, another top-tier talent just awakened. Two top-tier geniuses in the exact same place at the exact same time. Dinju agreed, her cold eyes flickering. Top-tier talents are rare enough that they only see a few dozen globally every year. To have two appear in one school, Su Bai needed to verify this. The message came from their internal intelligence. The burly man insisted. They've ordered him to secure this genius at any cost. It has to be real. The first was a phoenix type, the burly man said, pausing for effect. This new one is a beastmaster, a top-tier beastmaster. A beastmaster talent was more than just a personal power-up. It was a strategic asset for the entire human race. If this was true, it was the best news the country had received in years. Without another word, all three of them pushed their speed to the absolute limit. Back at the school, Su Bai had no idea these powerhouses were racing toward him. Su Bai did not know they were coming for Wang Fugui and the others. Su Bai kept his palm pressed against the awakening sphere. Su Bai followed the instructions. Susis Nonsis reaching out with his mind to feel the spiritual energy drifting in the air. Every animal from stray dogs to hidden predators dropped to the ground, bowing their heads in silence. It was as if they were welcoming a new god. Then the sphere exploded. A pillar of 7-colored light erupted from the ball, punching through the clouds and piercing the heavens. The shock wave was so massive that people across half the province turned their heads toward Tonghai City. There, as the golden pillar stabilized, shadows began to swirl around it. From the corners of the earth, the phantoms of legendary creatures manifested. The azure dragon, the phoenix, the chalin, the white tiger, the vermilion bird, and the black tortoise. Beasts that only existed in myths lined up in the sky. They circled the rainbow pillar, soaring toward the stars. This can't be real, someone on the playground whispered. Even the kings of the natural world, like tigers and lions, could only hover in the lower air, bowing there. The sky was crowded with thousands of creatures, many of which no human had ever seen before. The awakening sphere, a device built to measure the greatest talents in history, could not handle the pressure. It shattered into dust beneath his hand. The visions did not fade. Instead, they grew more vivid. The cries of dragons and the songs of phoenixes echoed through the 9 heavens, vibrating in the chests of everyone. Another burst of blinding light forced everyone to close their eyes. When Su Bai finally opened his, the wind was blowing again. If it were not for the pile of glass at his feet, Su Bai would have thought he would hallucinated the whole thing. In a secluded mountain range far from the city, an old man who had been in meditation for years suddenly. He smashed a boulder with a single punch and grabbed his phone. He barked into the receiver. A Saint-grade talent has just appeared. Find out who it is now. He hung up, looking toward the horizon with a grim expression. The appearance of a Saint-grade talent meant the world was about to change. The legends were coming true, and it all started right here in his hands. The old man in the mountains stared at his phone, his mind racing. A small city like this shouldn't be producing visions of this scale. To him, it meant one thing. This place was a hidden land of fortune. He did not waste a second and dialed another number. The old man snapped. The man on the other end sounded ecstatic. The old man did not have time for small talk. Just make sure he builds a relationship with the person who caused that vision. But Dad, the voice hesitated. The national exams are only a few months away. Moving Lin Chen now seems a bit reckless, does not it? Get him back here now. He hung up, leaving Gu Zhanghai staring at his phone in silence. His father had just finished years of meditation, and the first thing he did was cause a scene. But then he looked toward the horizon, toward the fading light of the visions. He realized his father was not crazy. Something world-changing had just happened in Tianhai City. Back at the school, the silence was deafening. The clouds above were still pierced by a massive hole where the light had punched through. It took a long time before anyone dared to breathe, let alone speak. A rainbow pillar of light. Someone whispered, "What kind of talent is that?" Su Bai had seen videos of SSS Great Awakenings. Another student muttered, their voice trembling. They usually show golden light. Last year's top 10 genius only raised a pillar a few meters high, but this was thousands of meters. It broke the sky. The 100 beasts bowing. The divine beast appearing. Wait, is not that Su Bai? The guy everyone said was a loser with a blood chi of 2.5. He was already out of their league, but now he's a god. In a dark corner of the playground, Su Fei's fists were clenched so hard his knuckles turned white. His eyes were bloodshot, filled with a mixture of murderous intent and pure, unadulterated madness. His lackey, who usually stood tall beside him, were now backing away like frightened rats. They had spent months mocking him alongside Su Fei. Now that Su Bai had awakened a talent that dwarfed theirs, they were terrified. They looked at each other, realizing their lives had just flipped upside down. Suddenly, a sharp whistling sound cut through the air. 3 figures descended from the sky, landing perfectly on the stage. To fly, a martial artist had to be at least at the Grandmaster level. These were representatives from the top 3 universities in the country. The woman leading them released a sliver of her aura, and Su Bai felt the air grow heavy. She was at least a great Grandmaster, if not higher. The school officials, including several martial kings, scrambled to their feet to greet them. Her voice was ice cold, carrying the weight of a martial emperor. The students nearby struggled to breathe under the pressure. The school principal stepped forward, his voice shaking as he described the scene. The divine beasts, the rainbow pillar, and the shattering of the awakening sphere. The 3 recruiters looked at the shards of glass at his feet, and then back at him. Their expressions shifted from curiosity to disbelief. The description sounded like the legends of old. Only this was even more powerful. The handsome young man from the National Defense University was the first to move. He stepped right up to him. Su Bai was from National Defense. Su Bai held his response. He leaned in closer. Don't worry about the details. The large, muscular man from Peking University pushed his way forward. Everyone knows national defense is too strict. Their resources are tied up in the military, and their mortality rate is high. Come to Peking instead. Su Bai would issue the admission letter this second. The handsome recruiter turned on him, his eyes flashing. Zhongdu gasped a major rank. Su Bai just checked with his superior. The vice dean said to get him at any cost. Zhongdu froze for a second, then pulled out his phone. Wait, don't agree to anything yet. Whatever they offer, they'll double it. While the 2 men were arguing over him, the woman, Vice Dean Zhu, ignored the chaos. She walked straight past him toward a girl standing nearby. Chu Yu. She looked at the girl, sensing an aura that perfectly matched her own. To her, his SSS great talent did not matter. She did not care about the old man's orders to recruit the genius. She only cared about finding a successor. Young lady, Vice Dean Zhu said, her cold expression softening just a fraction. Su Bai am the Vice Dean of Shanghai University, a martial emperor. A Vice Dean of a top university was personally asking to mentor a student. The crowd gasped, and a few people even covered their mouths in shock. A martial emperor was standing right in front of them. In their city of Tianhai, the highest-ranking official was the mayor, and he was only a grandmaster. Most people here would be lucky to see a grandmaster once in their lives. Seeing a martial emperor was a once-in-a-lifetime event. These were the elite protectors of humanity, usually stationed on alien battlefields to stop invasions. Losing even one would be a devastating blow to the human race. The vice dean of Shanghai University wanted her as a disciple. All she had to do was nod. But as she looked at the beautiful woman in front of her, she hesitated. She felt a strange familiar connection to the woman's aura, but her eyes kept drifting back to him. She did not want them to be separated, even if it meant turning down a martial emperor. She could not bring herself to leave his side. She opened her mouth to speak, but Vice Dean Zhu cut her off before she could say a word. Chu Yu did not deny it. She just looked down, confirming the dean's suspicion. She could not believe she had found such a sentimental disciple. Still, she decided that if she wanted the girl, she might as well recruit the boy too. He met the basic requirements. Vice Dean Zhu said, Su Bai would be right back. She walked over to where he was standing. The recruiters from Peking University and National Defense were still shouting at each other, trying to win him over. It sounded like a command. Su Bai studied her and felt a wave of annoyance. Su Bai had been holding out for Sha because he wanted freedom, but this woman's attitude was unbearable. Did everyone at that school act like this? His respect for Shanghai University hit rock bottom in an instant. Su Bai held his response, which clearly bothered her. She frowned, her expression turning even colder. Su Bai had things to do, she snapped. She was only here because of Chu Yu, and she made sure Su Bai understood it. She looked like she was about to explode. As for Shanghai University, Su Bai was not interested. The students looked at him like Su Bai was a dead man. A lowly student had just scolded a 7th-tier martial emperor. Vice Dean Zhu stared at him in pure disbelief. She could not process that someone like him would dare to speak to her that way. Su Bai did not wait for her to recover. Su Bai asked. He needed freedom and he needed resources. His family was wealthy, but most of their billions were tied up in fixed assets. Su Bai needed liquid cash to fuel his system and upgrade his power. Peking University offered the best scholarship and the most autonomy. Going to national defense would mean too many rules. And Shanghai University was now out of the question. He had seen him stand his ground against a martial emperor and loved his backbone. Of course, he shouted, grinning ear to ear. Xiang Du looked like he'd just won the lottery. He knew he was getting a massive bargain. Vice Dean Zhu, on the other hand, looked like she had swallowed a live grenade. She was the type of woman who was used to being the center of the universe. None of the recruiters took his final words as a joke. A divine-grade talent was not just a title. It was a promise of future godhood. They knew that one day his words about 30 years east, 30 years west, would become a reality. Li Xiao, from National Defense University, sighed and gave up. He knew his school's strict rules and military discipline would never appeal to a genius who craved freedom. Just as Su Bai was about to shake hands with Zhongdu Sai panicked. She realized that if Su Bai went to bed, the little disciple she had her eye on would follow him there. More importantly, she felt a strange connection between their talents. She sensed that Su Bai might be the key to her breaking through her own cultivation bottleneck. Even now, her voice carried that annoying, commanding tone that made his skin crawl. Danzu, what is the meaning of this? Shangdu snapped, his brow furrowing in anger. Whatever Peking University offered, they will match it. She honestly believed that after insulting him, she could just throw money at the problem, and Su Bai would come crawling back. Brother Shangdu, let's sign. Suddenly the air whistled. A powerful presence descended from the sky. He scanned the area, his eyes brightening when he spotted a familiar face. They bowed deeply, their voices filled with genuine respect. This was the legendary former head of Shanghai University. He was the 7th-tier martial emperor, a man who had retired to travel the world and only stepped in for the most critical matters. Compared to him, Vice Dean Zhu, a mere 2nd-tier martial emperor, was a child. Xiang stepped forward and quickly explained everything. He told the old dean about his talent and exactly how Zhu Tai had tried to bully him into submission. As the old dean listened, his face darkened, his eyebrows pulled together until his forehead looked like a crumpled map. A divine-grade talent had not appeared in thousands of years, not since the great human sovereign who saved their race from extinction. And here was his own vice dean driving that savior away, because of her petty pride. Su Bai couldn't believe this, the old dean muttered, his voice trembling with rage. Suits leave for a few years, and the school turns into this. Who authorized this brat to be a vice? Su Bai needed to go back and clean house. He bowed his head slightly, showing no arrogance despite his immense power. Student Su Bai, he am truly sorry, he said sincerely. Su Bai never imagined someone from his university would act this way. He looked at Vice Dean Zhu, who was standing there like a statue. Vice Dean Zhu bit her lip, her face flushing with humiliation. In her mind, Su Bai was still just a primary martial artist. She could not wrap her head around a martial emperor apologizing to a student. But under the old dean's icy glare, she had no choice. Su Bai was. He was sorry, she whispered, her voice barely audible. The old dean sighed, then looked at him with hopeful eyes. They will match all offers and provide even more resources. As a personal apology from him, he could not compete with a legendary martial emperor personally begging a student. He wanted to speak up, but he knew his place. He just stood there, looking like a kicked puppy. He was a hero who had bled on the front lines so peoples like him could live in peace. But Su Bai remembered how Vice Dean Zhu had looked down on him just minutes ago. But Su Bai had already made his choice. Zhang Du's eyes lit up again. He could not believe Su Bai had just turned down a legend. Su Bai saw the irony in it all. Before, she would not give him the time of day. Now Su Bai was the one she could not afford. The old dean froze for a second, a look of deep regret crossing his face. But he saw the determination in his eyes and knew Su Bai was not budging. He had lost the greatest genius in history because of one woman's ego. The old dean sighed, a look of genuine regret washing over his face. He did not try to push him anymore. He knew a talent like him was a once-in-a-century find. It was a tragedy for Shanghai University, but he was a man of grace. It's a pity, he murmured, loud enough for only them to hear. He did not feel insulted by his rejection. At his age and rank as a martial emperor, he had seen it all. Only the survival of the human race truly mattered to him now. He turned his back on him, his warm smile instantly vanishing into a mask of cold authority. Vice Dean Zhu, he said, his voice flat. When they returned to the academy, report to the dean's office. In the old dean's eyes, her career was effectively over. She had lost her standing. Her future disciples. She stood there trembling as the old dean waved one last time and walked away. Across the field, Chu Yuyu had been watching everything with wide eyes. She had stayed back while the teachers and officials were tense. But now that the pressure had lifted, the entire school erupted. The students were losing their minds. A martial emperor apologized to Bok Chun. One guy yelled, rubbing his eyes, "Am Su Bai dreaming?" That was the former dean of Shanghai University. Another girl screamed, "A seventh-stage martial emperor." Su Bai couldn't believe he bowed to a student. "Chu, you listened to the chatter," her heart racing. She did not understand the details, but she knew one thing. Her B. Chun brother was incredible. Principal Chun was beaming. He had been terrified that Sub would be punished for talking back to a powerhouse. In this world, the strong are not to be insulted. But instead, the powerhouse had apologized, and Su Bai had been scouted by Peking University on the spot. Not only did Su Bai had a God-grade talent, but several other students had awakened S-grade talents. His school was about to become legendary. Let's congratulate student Bichan for his early admission to Bai University, the principal shouted, leading a deafening round of applause. But in the shadows of the crowd, Su Fei was rotting with envy. His S-grade talent, which should have made him the star of the show, was being completely ignored. Even Wang Fugui, his fat friend, had overshadowed him with a unique S-grade talent. Su Fei hissed, his fists clenched so hard his knuckles turned white. He saw Chu Yu looking at him with adoration, and something snapped inside him. He knew if he did not act now, Su Bai would grow so fast he'd never touch him again. He masked his murderous intent, forcing his face into a calm, harmless expression. He stepped out of the crowd and walked toward him. Now that the ceremony is over, it's time for their duel, is not it? Su Fei asked, his voice steady. Su Bai had just awakened a God-grade talent, and this guy still thought he was just a primary practitioner. Still, he had promised a real-ming pill as a stake. That was worth a few minutes of his time. Su Bai was a high-level martial artist now. Crushing a primary martial artist like Su Fei would be like stepping on an ant. The principal and the recruiters watched with raised eyebrows. But they did not stop them. They figured it was just young men being competitive. On the stage, Su Fei did not attack immediately. He stood there looking at him with a strange mix of pity and hatred. Fate is a cruel joke, but talent is not everything. He took a step forward, his aura beginning to flare. He really had no idea what he was walking into. Su Fei kept rambling, his eyes scanning him for a weakness. He thought if he talked enough, Su Bai would lose focus. To him, this was a tactical opening. To him, it was just noise. Su Bai actually yawned. Su Bai was here for a fight, not a lecture. Su Bai came for a duel, not a lecture. His indifference pushed him over the edge. His face turned a deep, angry red, his blood boiling with rage. He lunged at him. In his hand, a sharp silver blade glinted in the sun. He was not just sparring. He was aiming for his vitals. He wanted him dead. Someone screamed from the stands. They thought Su Bai was a defenseless student about to be murdered. But then, the strongest among them suddenly stopped. Vice Dean Zhu, the martial king protecting him, stayed her hand. She had felt his true power before. She knew what was coming. She actually looked like she pitied him. The other grandmasters also sensed something strange and froze, watching the stage with wide eyes. Su Si watched Su Fei charge toward him. Villains die because they talk too much. Su Bai raised his hand, channeling the Yuan slash. The air around him shattered as his high-level martial artist energy flooded the stage. Su Fei's feet skidded to a halt. His face went pale. "No, impossible," he screamed. Su Bai did not let him finish. Su Bai swung his hand like a sword. A massive wave of golden sword chi swallowed him whole. It did not just hit him. It tore through his body, shredding his meridians and shattering his cultivation. He would never be a martial artist again. A blood-curdling scream echoed across the entire campus. Su Fei flew backward off the stage, crashing into the dirt with a heavy thud. He lay there coughing up thick sprays of blood. The two grandmasters rushed to his side to stop the bleeding. They could not let him die on school grounds, but his life as he knew it was over. Su Bai did not feel a shred of guilt. He moved with murderous intent first. This was nothing but self-defense. The Yuan slash was even more powerful than Su Bai thought. That was the strength of a heaven-grade technique. It was Chu Yu. Her voice was soft, trembling with worry. She looked at him with those big innocent eyes, her face full of concern. Her face turned bright red, and she turned around, running away as fast as she could. Su Bai watched her go, thinking about how much stronger he needed to get to protect people like her. Principal Chen ran over next, looking frantic. He looked like he wanted to strangle Su Fei himself for risking the life of a god-grade talent. "Su Bai, don't worry about the consequences," he said quickly. He attacked with a weapon. This was 100% legal self-defense. He was an old hand at school politics, and he knew exactly how to protect his best asset. "Su Bai," he said, his voice turning serious. "The city-wide grand competition is in 2 days. Su was already recruited by the best university in the country. His talent was recognized. His path to becoming a martial emperor was already laid out. Did Su Bai really need to waste time on a local tournament?" Principal Chin looked worried. He probably thought Su Bai would find the whole thing a nuisance and turn him down. He needed a hook, something to reel him in, but he did not seem to know what Su Bai valued. Suddenly, his expression shifted and a mysterious smile played on his lips. "Su Bai, the grand competition is being held in Zhang province this year," he said, watching him closely. Su Bai heard the rewards for first place have been increased significantly. They're about 10 times higher than in previous years. He paused for effect. Even Su Bai was jealous of it. More importantly, who told him Su Bai was not interested in money? Su Bai was currently down to his last few million yuan. In his world, that was basically being broke. Su Bai could not even afford a decent new talent upgrade at that price. Principal Chin struck while the iron was hot. This year's winner gets 10 spirit stones on top of the usual rewards. In all his years, Su Bai had only ever managed to get his hands on a few. Su Bai searched his memory for the term. They were legendary items harvested from the depths of secret realms. The conditions for them to form were incredibly rare. Even then, it took ages for a single stone to manifest. Their primary use was simple but tier 1. They helped a martial artist absorb pure energy. For anyone below the Grandmaster rank, 1 stone was usually enough to break through a minor realm instantly. For those above Grandmaster, they needed more. But the stones were still vital because they were so hard to find. They were usually reserved for martial kings and above. Anyone else who found one either hoarded it for the future or sold it immediately. The market price for a single spirit stone was a staggering 1 billion yuan. Su Bai cared about the price tag. 1 billion yuan per stone. 10 stones meant 10 billion yuan. They were 10 top-tier special talents waiting to be bought from his system. "Principal, representing the school is his duty," Su Bai said, slapping his chest with sudden enthusiasm. "It's a spirit stone." Su Bai got through some old connections. Su Bai caught the stone, feeling the cool energy radiating from it, understood exactly what this was. By accepting it, Su Bai was accepting a favor that he would eventually have to return. But Su Bai was not going to be timid. If a martial king wanted to give him a 1 billion yuan gift, Su Bai was not going to say no. Su Bai wondered what he would think if he knew the truth. Su Bai had not been hiding for 3 years. Su Bai had reached this level in just 2 days. Most people spent half their lives trying to achieve what Su Bai did in 48 hours. It was not fair, but then again, the world never was. Thanks, Principal, Su Bai said with a grin. The spirit stone vanished into his own spatial ring. As a rich second-generation heir, a spatial ring was the bare minimum for his wardrobe. Su Bai looked back at the school building, feeling the power humming in his veins. The competition was coming, and Su Bai was going to be the richest student that Zhang Province had ever seen. Everyone thought Su Bai was a talentless loser, a nobody who could not even reach the level of a basic practitioner. Then, in the blink of an eye, Su Bai revealed that he was a high-level martial artist. Su Bai had even managed to fool the experts. In the world of martial arts, this kind of revelation was explosive. But honestly, it made more sense this way. There was only one explanation in their minds. Su Bai had been hiding his true power. Su Bai had endured the insults and the mockery for over 2 years. The sheer mental discipline required for that was terrifying to them. Li Xiao walked over, a bitter smile on his face. Su Bai chuckled, trying to play it off. Thanks for the concern, Brother Xiang. Not a chance, they shouted in unison. They had seen what Su Bai did to Su Fei. They knew Su Bai was not the harmless kid he appeared to be. As Su Bai chatted with the Grandmasters and the Martial King, the rest of the school was in a state. The news spread like wildfire. Su Bai was not a weakling. He did not have a pathetic blood chi of 2.5. He was a high-level martial artist, a peerless genius. Su Bai watched him for 2 years. Look at Su Fei, another replied, pointing at the rival who was currently bleeding from every facial orifice. That move Su Bai used. Su Fei might not even survive. Su Bai saw a martial master fight once, and his strike felt even more powerful than that. She looked at the broken mirror pill in her hand and felt a wave of regret wash over her. She had looked down on him. She had dismissed the owner of an immortal-grade talent. Now the awakening ball was shattered, and the true extent of his special talent was still a mystery. She could not get one thought out of her head. Su Bai was a high-level martial artist who could strike with the power of a martial master. Su Bai had used his bare hand as a blade and achieved such devastating results. If she had been kinder, if she had invited him to Shanha Academy, with respect instead of arrogance, the outcome. Now, she had likely lost her chance to recruit him. She had waited years for a student like this, a hope to advance her own path. She had even disappointed the old principal. Maybe Su Bai really was wrong, she whispered, a bitter smile touching her lips. Vice Dean Zhu had spent years above ordinary students. Yet Su Bai was the first teenager who forced her to reconsider how arrogance could cost a school a priceless genius. Li, his class teacher, beamed as he walked over. As a teacher, there was no greater pride than seeing a student succeed. His class had produced 2 S-grade talents and 1 legendary immortal-grade talent. His career was set. He was going to be promoted for sure. Su Bai felt a bit awkward. Su Bai really had not been hiding his power for years. People thought Su Bai was some hidden dragon returning for revenge. But that was not it at all. Who has the patience to be bullied for 3 years when they're actually rich and powerful? Years of working a corporate 9-to-5 job had made him an expert at sucking up to the boss. He handed him 2 medicinal pills. One was his own marrow cleansing pill. The other was Su Fei's broken mirror pill. Su Bai glanced at them, and his system immediately scanned their quality. The broken mirror pill was high grade. A high-grade version gave a 90% chance of breaking through to the Martial King level. Su Fei must have begged and pleaded to get his hands on this. Now he was just his delivery boy. Su Bai decided he would give it to his mom. She was a high-level martial master, and this was exactly what she needed to level up. Su Bai understood then that his system had a hidden appraisal function. Su Bai could identify any treasure instantly. Su Bai was basically a walking cheat code for finding loot. Su Bai tucked the pills into his spatial ring, not even bothering to check his own marrow cleansing pill. Su Bai understood his parents only bought the best for him. About Su Fei, Mr. Su Bai would handle the school and his parents. He was disgusted by Su Fei's attempt to kill him in front of everyone. If Su Bai had not been strong enough to protect himself, he would be dead. In his mind, Su Fei got exactly what he deserved. But honestly, Su Bai was not worried. Su Fei was nothing to him now. If he was dead, he was dead. The principal had already promised to handle the fallout. If the Su family wanted revenge, they'd have to go through a lot of powerful people first. A recruiter from National Defense University suddenly stepped in front of him. He was intense, his eyes burning with passion. Don't just think about it. Act. Come to National Defense. Before Su Bai could even process the offer, another voice cut in louder and more aggressive. Come to Peking University. He shoved his way forward, looking at him like Su Bai was a rare treasure student, one of the top me's in the country. They have massive scholarships every year. Any student who can get into national defense can get into Peking. Right then, Xiongdu and Li Xiao started a frantic tug-of-war over the last person standing there, Wang Fugui. Su Bai had already been snatched up by Peking. Chu Yuyu was being eyed by Vice Dean Zhu. That left Wang Fugui as the final high-level talent with a top-tier beast tamer gift. Li Xiao was desperate to salvage his trip. Xiongdu, on the other hand, was already feeling smug. He had already secured Su Bai. Even if he missed out on this last genius, it would not hurt his reputation. Su Bai alone was enough to earn him a massive promotion. Wang Fugui looked at the two powerful men arguing over him and started sweating. He turned to him, his voice trembling. It's no use asking him. Wang Fugui stammered, looking at the recruiters. If he tells him to go east, Su Bai won't go west. So Su Bai really just want to be with Brother B. Li Xiao's face turned purple. He looked like he wanted to spit blood. Su Bai was seriously done with this guy. He realized all these geniuses were tied to Su Bai. If Su Bai went to Peking, these two were going to follow him like lost puppies. He had come all this way and gotten absolutely nothing. When he got back to his university, he was going to get chewed out by his superiors. Li Xiao stormed off, muttering about how National Defense University had lost its prestige. Xiongdu, however, was grinning from ear to ear. He stared at Wang Fugui, his heart dancing. He had not expected these kids to be so close. This was like a meat pie falling from the sky right into his lap. By securing Su Bai, he had essentially secured a whole team of monsters. Wang Fugui let out a long breath once the pressure was off, while then a huge grin broke across his face. He was not just happy he got into Peking. He was in awe of him. Principal Qin stepped back onto the awakening stage and grabbed the microphone. His voice boomed through the speakers across the playground. Because of this early awakening, the bloody requirements for every university will be raised in the coming months. The playground became a sea of mixed emotions. The lucky ones who awakened high-tier talents were celebrating their futures looking bright. The ones who awakened low-tier talents looked like they had just been handed a death sentence. For most of them, their ceiling was now fixed, at the Martial Master level. If they were rich or lucky, they might hit Martial King. But that was the end of the road. Man, Su Bai only got a D-grade talent. Su Bai guessed this is where they part ways. The realization hit hard. Su Bai got a C grade. His ancestors must be watching over him. Su Bai was going to brag about this for 10 years. Su Bai was a middle martial artist, and he only got a C. Hara, Su Bai was just a trainee, but he got a B grade. Su Bai could pick almost any school he want. It was a turning point, a single moment that decided their destinies. Relationships, friendships, and rivalries were all shifting in real time. As everyone realized, they were now heading toward very different. Vice Dean Zhu watched all of this with a complicated expression. She realized there was no coming back from this defeat. Without a word, she turned and left the school, her shadow long and lonely. As a martial king, she never dreamed she would be humiliated by a mere student. As soon as she was gone, Xiongdu hurried over to Chu Yuyu. Chu Yu already knew Su Bai had signed with them. She did not need any convincing. She nodded blankly, agreeing before Xiongdu could even offer her any special perks. He knew she was his fiancée. He looked at her, beautiful, talented and loyal, and then looked at him. Before today, everyone thought Su Bai was a loser. They would have said a toad was trying to eat swan meat, or that a beautiful flower was being planted. But now with his saint-level talent and his strength, as a high-level martial artist, they were the perfect match. He had recruited 3 top-tier geniuses in one go. His performance review was going to be off the charts. There was a vice dean position at Peking that had been vacant for years, and he finally felt it was. He had been stuck at the great grandmaster level for a long time, just one step away from becoming. The rewards from the dean for this haul would definitely give him the push he needed to break through. He knew he had to head back to the capital to report, but he wanted to leave a good impression. He handed each of them a custom badge. Use these to enter the university when the time comes, he said. He turned to him, wanting to show his gratitude. He knew his family was worth hundreds of billions, so money or common items would not impress him. He gritted his teeth, reached into his spatial ring, and pulled out his most prized possessions. He handed him 3 spirit stones. These were incredibly rare, even for someone of his status. It was a clear signal he was not just a recruiter anymore. He wanted to be his ally. This year's martial arts exam is special. He looked at him, his eyes shining with the calculated interest of a veteran recruiter. A saint-level talent, as long as Su Bai did not die young, was a future martial emperor in the making. Investing 3 spirit stones now was a small price to pay for that kind of connection. A great grandmaster was actively trying to befriend him. Between these and the stone the principal gave him, that was enough to start investigating what made these things so mysterious. "Don't worry, Brother Xing," said, giving him a confident nod. Su Bai had put years of work into this. Su Bai wanted to verify the results personally. "Good," he replied, looking satisfied. With that, Shengdu vanished. The principal officially dismissed them for the holidays. The students, who had already awakened their talents, headed home, buzzing with excitement. The rest were stuck on the playground waiting for the Martial Arts Association to rush over a replacement awakening orb. Su Bai wanted to get home and study his new spirit stones. After a few quick goodbyes, Su Bai headed for the gates. His best friend, Wang Fugui, caught up with him, practically vibrating with energy. "I go by," he shouted, his face flushed. Su Bai got recruited by Ping University too. Brother Xiang told him to look for a teacher named Wang once Su Bai got there. Apparently, he's a martial king with a beast tamer talent. His dad is going to lose his mind when he hears Su Bai got an S-level talent. Su was going to be living the high life. Wang Fugui started listing off all the ways he was going to slick off and enjoy himself now that Su Bai was going to work hard and practice. Su Bai said, "The grand competition is in 2 days." Wang Fui's face fell instantly. He let out a long, dramatic wail. "Give him back his old friend." Su Bai gave him a light smack on the head. "Geniuses from all the major cities will be there. There might even be a few top-tier beauties." The Flace mentioned beauties. His eyes lit up like lanterns. Then reality hit him, and he deflated again. He realized he was currently the bottom of the barrel among geniuses. Su Bai couldn't go there just to be a laughingstock for honor for the ladies. Su Bai had to cultivate like a madman. He pumped his fist in the air full of renewed vigor. Su Bai almost wished his system was a counter-slacker system. Su Bai could just feed these geniuses a few motivational speeches and level up while they did all the work. "That's the spirit," Su Bai said, patting his shoulder. Su Bai had made up his mind by go. In 2 days, Su Bai was going to break through to intermediate martial artist. Su Bai would make those people drop their jaws. Su Bai felt a little guilty. Maybe Su Bai would overdone the chicken soup for the soul. The kid had an S-level talent and a rare subclass. Nobody was going to look down on him regardless of his level. Su Bai heard that only happens when someone gets an A-level talent or higher. Wang Fugui stepped forward, wearing a look that was incredibly punchable. Wang Fu gasped dramatically, stumbling back and pointing a finger at Lu Qi. Su Bai covered his face with his hand. Su Bai did not know this idiot. "They're done with the ceremony." He really did get an S-level talent and a special subclass. Louis stared at Wang Fugui, his mouth hanging open. This loser actually got an S-level and a special talent. Wang Fugui narrowed his eyes, looming over Luo Qi. Lu Qi realized his mistake instantly. The power dynamic had shifted. Wang Fugui was not just a rich kid anymore. Wang Fugui understood that Su Bai meant himself. Wang Fugui patted Luo Qi's head, looking pleased. Lu Qi nodded frantically and scrambled away as fast as he could. Su Bai did not want to deal with any more nonsense, so he picked up the pace toward home. Hidden in the shadows of a nearby alley, his maid Lu Yin watched them go. Everything that had happened today felt like a fever dream. The useless young master she was supposed to protect had suddenly transformed. He had hidden his strength as a high-level martial artist. He had awakened a saint-level talent. He had stood his ground against a martial king, crippled a rival in one move. She touched her forehead, wondering if she had accidentally fallen into an illusion. She realized now why she had not felt the need to intervene when Su Fei challenged him. Su Bai had not needed protection at all. It took her a long time to process the shock. On the way back, she finally pulled out her phone and called his parents to report the situation. His father, Su Xinggao, stammered into the receiver. His right hand was trembling. He could not believe his ears. Lu Yin knew how ridiculous it sounded. If she had not seen it with her own eyes, she would have thought it was a bad joke. She took a deep breath and patiently repeated the day's events. "Su Bai understand," his father said, his voice thick with suppressed emotion. "Please protect him well. His mother and Su Bai are coming back immediately." He hung up and sat there for a second, trying to breathe. Then he scrambled through his contacts and called his mother. Su Bai had a meeting starting soon. His father blurted out, "Their boy, that brat of ours, he awakened today." It's a saint-level talent, a legend. Back on the street, Lu Yin finished the call and hurried to catch up with him. She looked at him with a new sense of weariness. Protecting a master with this kind of talent was going to be a dangerous high-stakes job. With his saint-level talent and his status as a high-level martial artist, his senses were razor-sharp. Su Bai felt a gaze burning into the back of his neck. Su Bai looked around, scanning the crowds in the alleys, but he could not see anyone watching him. Even so, Su Bai trusted his gut. Wang Fugui and Su Bai were now considered top-tier geniuses. Su Bai was even more than that. Su Bai was a legend in the making. Su Bai understood the history of this world. For thousands of years, the alien races had been at war with humanity. They sent spies and assassins into their cities to hunt down young talents. A genius who does not grow up is not a genius at all. Countless human prodigies had been murdered before they could reach their peak. Even SSS-level talents had been assassinated in recent years. Su Bai was only a high-level martial artist. Su Bai had made too much noise today. The aliens would definitely come for him. The urge to get stronger grew like a fire in his chest. Luckily, Su Bai had the 4 spirit stones from the principal and Captain Shang. Those would be enough to push his cultivation further. Plus, Su Bai had that body-cleansing pill. Su Bai did not need it anymore, so he could sell it and buy more top-tier talents from the system. Su Bai needed to get home and cultivate. Meanwhile, at the best hospital in Tianhai City, the atmosphere was grim. Su Fei had been rushed into the ICU. On the outside, he did not look too bad, but his insides were a wreck. The doctors in the trauma room were at a total loss. Even though he had been fed life-saving pills on the way, he was barely hanging on by a thread. His parents dropped everything and raced to the hospital, calling in every top specialist in the city. Money was no object, but when the experts saw the state of his body, they stopped working. The doctors exchanged helpless looks inside. There was nothing they could do. They stitched up his wounds, cleaned the blood, and walked out of the operating room. Su Fei's mother ran up to them, her face pale with terror. "Doctor, is his son okay?" The lead surgeon looked at her with pity. Before he even reached the hospital, he was already. He did not finish the sentence. The doctors hurried away before the family could react. Su Fei's mother collapsed to the floor as if she'd been struck by lightning. The hospital corridors filled with the sound of her wailing. Then her grief turned into a white-hot rage. She looked up at her husband, screaming. He was an S-level genius. She grabbed his coat, shaking him. Which bastard killed his son? Su Bai wanted his whole family dead. Su Bai wanted them buried with Xia Fei. She acted like a mad woman, rolling on the floor and screaming for blood. Su Fei's father just looked down at her with cold eyes. On the way here, he had already received a call from the higher-ups. They told him his son had brought this on himself. They told him to mourn and move on, and specifically warned him not to cause trouble for the one who. He had agreed over the phone, but this was his son. The debt of blood had to be paid. His son was an S-level talent. His ticket to finally escaping the control of his father-in-law. Seeing his wife act like a spoiled child only made him angrier. It was a curse to have a wife like this. But he could not offend her yet, or he'd have to answer to her father. "Stop making a scene. Now clean yourself up and let's go home." He looked toward the ICU door one last time. No matter how wrong his son was, no outsider had the right to discipline him like that. Su Sant-level talent. Huh? Su Wenhu walked into a quiet corner of the hospital and dialed the number he had kept hidden. A low, growly voice answered. Su finally made up his mind. "Cut the crap," Su Wenho said, his voice trembling with malice. The growly voice on the other end chuckled. "They were already planning to move." Swenhe said, his voice trembling with malice. "Then they have a deal. Mr. Deep inside a hidden basement. Somewhere in Zhang province." The man hung up the phone. He looked around the room at his companions. If a normal person had walked in, they would have died of fright. They were monsters, creatures that shouldn't exist outside of myths. A minotaur leaned against a wall. A centaur polished a blade, while a werewolf paced near a pile of bleached skeletons. These were intelligent, cunning beings who had invaded this world to plunder its spiritual energy. Unlike the mindless beasts that attacked cities in wild frenzies, these creatures could think. "Plot. Boss," the man who spoke to Su Wenwei said, looking toward a dark corner. "He wants them to kill the kid who hurt his son." A large shadow shifted in the corner. The leader of the group nodded slowly. "Their operations will be much smoother now." The leader paused, his eyes glowing in the dark. "As for his son's killer, it's a simple task." Su Bai had already sent the report upstairs. "One of them is rumored to have a saint-level talent. They need to verify if that's true." He stood up, his presence filling the room with dread. The mission rank is at least S level. A Grandmaster might even be sent to handle this personally. Keep a close eye on the Su family and their company. They have big plans for them. The basement fell back into a deathly silence. Meanwhile, Su Bai arrived back at his villa. Everything looked exactly the same. The quiet luxury of the house felt like a dream compared to the chaos at school. Su Bai decided to stop hiding and push his cultivation even harder. Su was about to head to his room to cultivate when the doorbell rang. Su Bai never invited friends over, and his rich best friend, Wang Fugui, was currently at home acting like a mad. After the inspirational speech Su Bai gave him, he walked to the door and pulled it open. "Son." Before Su Bai could react, a woman lunged forward and pulled him into a tight hug. It was his mother. Su Bai could see tears welling up in her eyes. Behind her stood his father, looking at him with a mix of shock and pride. For years, they had worked themselves to the bone, just so Su Bai could live a normal life. They never expected him to be anything special. But in just one day, Su Bai had become a high-level martial artist with a saint-level talent and a guaranteed. Since Su Bai transmigrated, he would barely seen them. They usually just sent money to his account and gave him a quick phone call once a month. Su Bai preferred it that way. Facing two total strangers who claimed to be his parents was a lot to handle. "Oh, Mom, Su Bai was right here," he mumbled, trying to breathe. As she squeezed him, Su Bai felt a sharp, piercing gaze on the side of his head. Su Bai looked over and saw his cheap dad staring at him. Was he actually jealous of his own son? The man was a total wife-doing maniac. Su Bai managed to wiggle out of the hug and stood straight. Su Bai wanted to roll his eyes. Everyone thought Su Bai was some master of disguise. 2 days ago, Su Bai really was a loser. Su Bai, I just happened to reach this level in 48 hours. If people knew Su Bai could grow this fastest, he would be kidnapped and dissected by a martial emperor within the hour. His father, Su Xingao, turned red. He reached for his belt, looking like he wanted to give him a taste of the fatherly love Su Bai had missed. Their son has been suffering in silence for years, hiding his talent to stay safe. And now they finally know he's a genius. His father's intimidation attempt collapsed in an instant. The moment his mother threatened him, he completely lost his nerve. He froze mid-action, looking at him with a face full of suppressed rage. He shot him a look that said, Su Bai would remember this. It was obvious he was jealous of his own kid. His mother did not care. She slapped him hard across the back, her voice turning sharp and commanding. His father, Su Xingao, immediately wiped the expression off his face. He transformed into a perfectly normal, supportive father in a heartbeat. With him out of the way, his mother turned her full attention back to him. She realized how little she'd been involved in his life lately and wanted to make up for lost time. It's not like Su Bai was lonely. But then her eyes twinkled with a different kind of interest. "So, tell him, how are things going with Chu Yu? Chu Yu is perfect. She's beautiful, talented, and so kind." It seemed no matter what world Su Bai was in, he could not escape parents nagging about marriage. His mother had heard from the maid that Su Bai would been ignoring Chu Yu lately, treating a prize cabbage like it was. To her, Chu Yu was the perfect daughter-in-law, and the fact that they were childhood sweethearts made it even better. Back when everyone thought Su Bai was a loser, she might have let it go to spare the girl. But now that Su Bai was a high-level martial artist, she was not letting that girl get away. Chu Yu and Su Bai are way too young to even think about marriage. Su Bai had ignored her for 2.5 years because of his lack of talent. Even if she still liked him, now was not the time to talk about weddings. "Humph, Su Bai don't care," his mother said, waving her hand dismissively. If it's not Chu Yu, Su Bai was not agreeing to it. She just awakened an SS-ranked talent. Su Bai reached into his spatial ring and pulled out a glowing pill. "This is a Martial King breakthrough pill." His mother stopped mid-sentence. She stared at the pill in her hand, sniffing the faint medicinal aroma. A pill like this would easily cost hundreds of millions on the open market and could only be crafted, she asked, her voice trembling slightly. "Oh, that," Su Bai said casually. Su Bai made a bet with Su Fei from the Su family. He lost, so the pill is his now. Su Bai heard he's in the hospital, but even if he lives, he's done as a martial artist. Is that going to be a problem for the family? Before his mother could even process the news, his father stepped forward, his eyes wide. He had heard about the conflict from the maid, but he had not realized Su Bai would gone that far. The Su family and their family business were already rivals. Taking out their genius heir was a massive blow. He tried to kill him first. Su Bai had hated that old dog Su for years. He's always trying to compete with him. Now his son is and there's nothing he can do but cry about it. She turned back to him, her face full of worry. The Su family is going to be furious, especially Su Fei's mother. That woman is a total nightmare. If she finds out her son is ruined, she'll go nuclear. His father nodded, his expression turning serious again. They'll definitely want revenge. His cheap dad was right. Su Bai needed to watch out for any hidden snakes trying to sneak into his house at night. Having them around was a good safety net, even if it meant his peaceful solo life was officially over. Su Bai had their memories, but they still felt like strangers to him. In his mind, Su Bai understood they had always been good to him. They gave him everything Su Bai asked for, but unlike Su Fei's parents, they did not spoil him. They had strong morals and expected him to have them, too. Whenever the original Su Bai messed up, even his gentle mother would turn terrifying. They'd team up for a mixed doubles lecture, and by lecture, Su Bai mean a beating, until he admitted his mistakes. But as Su Bai got older and more independent, they got busier with work. Once Su Bai hit high school and started slacking off, they mostly left him alone. They saw his blood chi was not moving no matter how hard Su Bai tried. So, they stopped pushing the martial arts path. They figured Su Bai would just inherit the family business. They probably even thought about starting a new account and having another kid, while work kept them too busy to try. She was a martial king after all. She knew how to read a room. She nodded subtly, signaling that she'd keep him safe. His father finally relaxed after confirming the hidden bodyguard would remain nearby. His mother accepted the breakthrough pill as Su Bai's first meaningful gift to her. Shalu, take good care of his boy. She kept nagging about the daughter-in-law thing until the door closed. Apparently, she was already planning a trip to the Chu family. She thought they were almost old enough to get married. She clutched the pill Su Bai gave her like a treasure. It was the first gift Su Bai would ever given her, and she looked like she did not even want to eat it. Su Bai let out a long breath once they were gone. The marriage urge is a power level all its own. Finally, Su Bai could focus on getting stronger. Su Bai went up to his room and pulled out the 4 spirit stones he would acquire today. The moment they touched his hand, his silent system suddenly flared to life. A few seconds later, it finished. It had added spirit stones as a currency, opened a system shop, and added a new top-up feature. A sweet system voice urged Su Bai to deposit all 4 spirit stones immediately, revealing that the new shop was just as hungry for rare currency as the original cash system. It will help Master grow much faster. The system was finally showing its true colors. It just wanted his money. It was trying to sweet-talk him into a deposit. Su Bai ignored the voice and looked at his updated status panel. His upgraded panel now showed immortal-grade talent, top-tier fire affinity, a high-level martial artist realm, advanced cultivation methods, and only a modest cash balance. The shop was the real prize. Su Bai opened it, and a holographic projection filled his vision, scrolling through items so fast it made his head spin. When it stopped, his jaw dropped. The Xinhuan sword, the legendary blade of China. It said it could protect the human race and make the user invincible. Left over from the goddess Niwa. It promised infinite vitality and the best talent in the universe. Price 99,999 spirit stones. The sword did not even have a price and the stone cost a fortune. The system was just teasing him, showing him things that would make him a god just to make him feel. If Su Bai had any of those, he would not need to cultivate. Su Bai could just wipe out entire alien races with a wave of his hand. Su Bai shook his head and set a filter for items costing 4 spirit stones or less. The list refreshed, becoming much more realistic. Pirong's sword, a high-grade immortal iron sword forged by a nameless grade form master, sharp enough to cut through steel like butter. Price, 1 spirit stone. Grade 3 Martial King Breakthrough Pill, a top-quality pill to help break through the bottlenecks of the Martial King realm. Now they were talking. This was how Su Bai was going to win. The pill description was clear. It guaranteed a 100% success rate for breaking through to the Martial King realm. The price was just 1 spirit stone. Then Su Bai saw the grade 5 marrow cleansing pill. The description said it was a top-tier medicine that could strip every impurity from his body. Using it would skyrocket his cultivation speed. There was even a note saying that if Su Bai used it before his official awakening ceremony, something unknown and special, that one cost 2 spirit stones. Su Bai scanned the rest of the list. Most of the items were things Susie would seen before. But there was a massive difference. Every single pill in this shop was supreme grade. Supreme grade pills were legendary. Even a basic Sarch grade 1 Supreme pill was enough to make people go insane with greed. Only a grade 6 Alchemist or higher could even dream of refining something that pure. The reason they were called Supreme was simple. But a Supreme pill, it was pure power with no side effects. Nobody ever sold these on the open market. Even other alchemists would kill for one just to study its secrets. Nowadays, the knowledge of how to make them was almost extinct. Seeing a whole shop full of them made his head spin. The system was on a completely different level from the mortal world. His only complaint was the currency. Su Bai kept scrolling, looking for something to give him an edge. Su Bai was disappointed that there were not any experience pills to instantly level him up. That would have been too easy. However, Su Bai did find a grade 3 spirit accumulation pill. It promised to drastically increase his cultivation speed, based on his realm and talent. It would not work once Su Bai hit the Martial King stage. But for now, it was perfect. The price was 1 spirit stone. Su Bai bought it. Su Bai only had 4 spirit stones total, and he would already spent some. Su Bai understood. He needed to start hoarding these things if he wanted the good stuff. The spirit accumulation pill, and that pure young sword Su Bai saw earlier. The sword was Earth grade low rank. Most martial grandmasters could not even get their hands on an Earth grade weapon. Yet, Su Bai got one for a single spirit stone. In this world, weapons were ranked heaven, earth, black, and yellow. A good weapon was often better than a pill. If a primary martial artist held a yellow grade weapon, they could easily fight 3 people at their own level. Luckily, Su Bai had an immortal grade talent. This sword was the perfect match for his Yuan slash, with his current strength as a high-level martial artist. And this blade, Su Bai felt like he could take, maybe even a mid or high-level one. His inventory updated. 1 spirit accumulation pill and 1 pure yang sword. His balance dropped from 4 stones to 2. Suddenly, a golden blade appeared in his hand. It was forged from pure young iron, incredibly sharp and tougher than any common steel. Su Bai channeled a bit of Mai Chi into it and gave it a light swing. A fierce golden sword aura exploded from the blade. The air in his room turned violent, ready to shred everything in sight. Su Bai almost leveled his own house. The power was double what Su Bai expected, and that was without even using a technique. The school tournament championship was basically his. There was no point in saving them. Su Bai decided to use them to boost his cultivation right now. Su Bai pulled out the spirit accumulation pill. The scent was incredible, filling the room with a fragrance that made his head clear. Su Bai swallowed it in one gulp and sat cross-legged on his bed. Su Bai activated his enlightenment secret technique while holding a spirit stone in his hand to absorb its energy. The natural energy in the room, which usually felt, still began to thrash around. The pill acted like a magnet. The energy rushed toward him like a storm. Thanks to his immortal grade talent, his body acted like a bottomless pit. No matter how much energy poured in, Su Bai soaked it all up without breaking a sweat. Between the surging natural energy, the pill, and his secret cultivation technique, his immortal grade talent went into overdrive. Su Bai felt his body changing, so he pushed harder greedily, drinking in every drop of energy from the room. Suddenly, a crisp cracking sound echoed from inside his chest. It felt like a heavy shackle had finally snapped. A wave of pure relief washed over him. Su Bai had broken through. Su Bai was now a martial master. Su Bai could feel his blood qi surging through his veins, thickening and refining itself into something far more potent. It was a tingling, numbing sensation that felt incredible. A martial master begins the process of converting raw blood qi into true spiritual energy. Once a warrior reaches the martial king stage, that conversion is complete. But getting there is the hard part. The jump from a high-level martial master to a martial king is like facing a massive great wall. Most people spend their entire lives stuck on the other side, unable to climb over. Even the greatest geniuses in history took a week to reach the master stage and a full month to hit. For a normal person, those steps take years. His absorption speed only increased. The spirit stone in his hand visibly dimmed as Su Bai drained it dry. Su Bai was lucky he had these stones. The thin energy in the air would not have been enough to fuel his growth. His foundation as a primary martial master felt rock solid within minutes. For anyone else, stabilizing this realm would take weeks of meditation. While 3 hours later, Su Bai hit intermediate martial master. The blood qi in his body compressed again, turning into something that felt dangerously close to the spiritual energy. Su Bai kept pushing, ignoring the world outside. When the first rays of morning light hit his face, That familiar tingling sensation returned one more time. Su Bai snapped his eyes open. The sudden explosion of power from his breakthrough was too much to contain. A shockwave of energy rippled out, threatening to wreck the furniture. Downstairs, Lu Yin noticed immediately. Su Bai studied the spirit stone in his hand. It was gray and lifeless, completely drained of energy. Su Bai tossed it into his storage space. Su Bai only had one stone left now, but the trade-off was insane. One pill and one stone had taken him from a high-level martial artist to a high-level master. If Su Bai told the world, not even a martial emperor would believe him. Suddenly, the air in the hallway turned heavy. A terrifying pressure erupted. While before Su Bai could blink, his bedroom door was kicked off its hinges with a violent bang. Lu Yin stood there, her eyes cold, her body radiating a killing intent so sharp it made his skin crawl. She was ready to execute whoever was attacking him. Su Bai was happy about his breakthrough, but he was not expecting his door to be demolished. More importantly, Su Bai was staring at the source of that terrifying pressure. His maid, the woman who had been cooking his meals and doing his laundry for 2 years, was a marshal. The principal of his school was only at that level. She was a top-tier powerhouse, acting as a professional servant. Lu Yin scanned the room one last time. When she realized there was no intruder, her face went pale. She had sensed his sudden spike in power and reacted instinctively, completely forgetting to hide her own strength. She looked at him, her eyes widening in disbelief. Yesterday, Su Bai was just a student struggling with his blood qi. She started rationalizing it immediately, thinking Su Bai must have been hiding his true strength for years, even from her. In her mind, nobody could achieve this in a night. It took her a year of brutal training to make that jump. But as she looked at his steady breath and calm eyes, she realized the truth was standing right in front. Su Bai could see her brain working overtime, trying to make sense of what she was seeing. Even a legendary genius could not jump an entire realm in a single night. She must have concluded that Su Bai would have been hiding his true strength all along. A high-level martial master. And Su Bai had not even taken the college entrance exams yet. If this news got out, the consequences would be dire. The last time a human showed this kind of talent, he became a sword saint. The alien races still lived in fear of the day he dominated them thousands of years ago. They would never allow another sword saint to rise. Lu Yin realized she had to report this to his father immediately. If she did not, being fired would be the least of her worries. She checked to make sure Su Bai was okay, then hurried out of the room. His father, Su Xingkao, was back at his office looking over a business proposal worth $10 billion. When he heard Lu Yan's report, he leaped to his feet, nearly knocking his chair over. The $10 billion deal did not matter anymore. His son, Su Bai, has the potential to shake the world. He thought reaching the level of a professional marshal. Once he calmed down, he started thinking about the danger. If his talent was this high, alien spies would definitely target him. They need to move, he muttered. He called his mother Shuring. Right away. Their son? Yeah, exactly. They're moving tomorrow. Back in his room, Su Bai was still in a daze. His door was gone, and his beautiful maid turned out to be a hidden martial king. That meant she was not just a maid. She was a bodyguard his parents hired to watch him. Su Bai felt a cold shiver run down his spine, thinking about how she'd been monitoring everything he did. Su Bai had jumped from a high-level martial artist to a high-level martial master in one night. Sure, Su Bai had the immortal-grade talent and the earth-grade cultivation technique, but it had cost him 2 spirit stones. That was the equivalent of $20 billion for one night of training. Martial arts was a rich man's game, and even his parents' wealth could not sustain that kind of spending forever. Su Bai needed to find a way to make his own money. In this world, the big earners were alchemists and blacksmiths. With his system, Su Bai could sell top-tier pills and weapons, but those professions required specific talents. Lu Yin was nowhere to be seen, probably because things were awkward now that Su Bai understood her secret. Su Bai sat down and ate breakfast while planning his next move. First, Su Bai had a marrow cleansing pill. It was a grade 5 pill, which meant it was worth billions. If Su Bai sold it, he would have the cash to copy more talents and start a cycle of profit. The only problem was the system shop. It only accepted spirit stones as currency, and those were incredibly rare. The only way to get more was to win the school competition tomorrow, explore dangerous hidden realms, or kill high level. For now, Su Bai just needed to sell the pill. Su Bai finished his meal and left the villa. Su Bai pulled up a map on his phone and searched for the nearest trade house. Jubao Pavilion, 300 m away. the app told him. Jubao Pavilion was a global powerhouse. Their president and vice president were both martial emperors. Even a branch manager in a small city like Tianhai City was at least a martial king. In a provincial capital, they were grand masters. With dozens of branches across the country, their strength rivaled the national army. There were three major powers in the country: the military, Jubao Pavilion, and a third, mysterious organization. Luckily, Jubao Pavilion only cared about business, not politics. They were the top choice for rogue cultivators, who did not want the restrictions of the military. In his old world, business was just business. At least Su Bai did not have to worry about them ripping him off. A business that big lived and died by its reputation. Destination in 100 meters, the map announced. It was a massive towering pagoda that looked like an ancient Chinese tea house, standing tall and proud among. Su Bai could not even tell what kind of materials they used to build it, but it looked ancient and indestructible. The Jubao Pavilion sign hung high in the center, glowing with a prestige that could be seen from blocks away. His navigation app chirped one last time, confirming that he had arrived, and then went silent. As Su Bai walked toward the entrance, a group of young, pretty receptionists stopped their chatting to look at him. Su Bai could feel their eyes scanning his clothes and his posture. They probably saw a rich student getting ready for his final lampstand. He's definitely here to buy pills for the awakening ceremony. He looks like he's got money. Apparently, Lily was a recent graduate with a mother who was deathly ill at home. She needed the money for medical bills. It was a rare sight in a world this cutthroat. Instead of fighting over a wealthy-looking client, the veteran girls were stepping back to help the newcomer. It was a small, quiet act of kindness that reminded him there was still some humanity left in this era. Lily took a deep breath, smoothed out her uniform, and approached him with a nervous but professional smile. She pointed to a level 1 mid-grade recovery pill. It cost 100,000 yuan and only worked for basic practitioners. Then there was a level 1 high-grade spirit gathering pill for 1,000,000 yuan. Level 2 pills were already hitting the tens of millions. Sub understood quickly that cultivation was a game for the elite. Based on what Su Bai saw, the levels were consistent. Level 1 was for practitioners, Level 2 for martial masters, all the way up to Level 7 for martial emperors. As for Level 8 or 9 pills, they did not exist anymore. At least no living alchemist on Earth could make them. They were only found in ancient ruins left behind from the last era of spiritual recovery. Thousands of years ago, Earth had been even more glorious than it was now. Masters walked the streets, and some had even surpassed the emperor level before disappearing. Then, the spiritual energy vanished, leading to the age of technology, only to return again recently. No one knew why the old world collapsed. Lily noticed Su Bai was just staring at the cases without picking anything. She asked, worried she was losing the sale. Su Bai was not here to buy, he said calmly. Subi was here to sell. He reached into his storage ring and pulled out the level 5 high-grade marrow cleansing pill. The moment it touched the air, a thick heavenly fragrance exploded through the entire pavilion. It was not just a smell. It felt like a wave of pure energy. She stood there, eyes wide, completely intoxicated by the scent. Su Bai had to call her name twice before she snapped out of it. Su Bai, he can't handle this transaction, she stammered, her voice trembling with excitement. This has to be a high-level pill. Su Bai had to get the president. She turned and ran toward the elevator, her face flushed. A commission on a pill this rare would be enough to save her mother 10 times over. She scrambled toward the top floor, but she did not even need to knock. The president of the branch was already stepping out of his office, his eyes sharp, drawn by the scent. The office door swung open, and 2 men stepped out. One was the branch president, but the man beside him caught his attention. It was Master Jiang. Master Jiang was a second-rank alchemist, a rare talent the treasure pavilionists had spent a fortune to recruit. He was usually buried in his lab, hidden away from the world. He was the reason this branch could even offer second-rank pills for sale. President, Su Bai was just coming to Lily started, but the president cut her off with a wave of his hand. He turned to the alchemist. Master Jiang was muttering to himself, his nose twitching. That fragrance, could it be related to the vision from yesterday? The authorities had tried to suppress the news of the heavenly phenomenon, but people in the business were not blind. Master Jiang looked like a man possessed. Su Bai could tell. He believed this pill was his ticket to finally breaking through his current alchemist rank. Down in the main hall, Su Bai was the center of attention. The girls who had been gossiping earlier were staring at him with their mouths hanging open. They could not believe a kid like him was holding a high-grade pill with such a potent aroma. They knew if this sale went through, Lily's commission would be enough to save her mother. Master Jiang followed, his eyes scanning him with intense curiosity. He seemed baffled that someone so young possessed such a treasure. Lily stood off to the side, quiet and respectful. She knew this conversation was way above her pay grade. His name is Su Bai, he replied calmly. Su Bai could almost see the gears turning as he searched for a Su family in the province that fit. The Su Snoo was rumored to be a useless failure, with a blood chi of only 2.5. He looked at him again, sensing his energy. His expression shifted from curiosity to disbelief. Susi was radiating the aura of a martial master, a 17-year-old martial master in Tianhai City. He had not heard a single whisper about this. Tell him, he said, leaning in slightly. Su Bai was not surprised he knew his cheap father. The man owned a multi-billion-dollar empire and was a martial king. He was a legend in these circles. He's his father, Su Bai said. Is there a problem? The rumors said Su Xinggao's son was a talentless brat who would not even become a basic warrior before the exams. Then it clicked for him. He must have heard about the awakening ceremony at the first high school, the two S-grade talents, the one God grade. If Su Bai was this strong, it made sense why he was not afraid of the Su family's retaliation. No problem at all. His name is Fang Yucheng. Next time, give him a heads up. In 2 sentences, he turned a business transaction into a family favor. Sure thing, Uncle Fo. He was a martial king and the head of the treasure pavilion. Having him in his corner was a massive win. Fang Yucheng asked, glancing at the bottle in his hand. Beside him, Master Jiang was staring at the pill like a starving man looking at a feast. Yes, Su Bai said, holding it up. It's a level 5 high-grade marrow cleansing pill. It's meant for improving one's latent talent, but at his current level, Su Bai don't really need it. We'll buy it, Master Jiang shouted before the president could even open his mouth. Whatever the price, we'll take it. Young friend, sell it to him. A level 5 pill. He'd only ever seen a few level 4 pills in his entire life. If he could study this, he could finally advance. Su Bai thought he was just a bodyguard. Fang Yucheng realized he'd forgotten his manners. Forgive him, Su Bai. This is Master Jiang, a second-rank alchemist. He's a bit sensitive when it comes to high-level pills. As Su Bai studied Jiang Dihai, a familiar notification flashed in his vision. Ultimate Alchemist talent detected. Su Bai could copy alchemist talents too. Once Su Bai sold this pill and got the money, that talent was his. Su Bai came to the treasure pavilion specifically to sell this. Su Bai would definitely sell it to the treasure pavilion, he said, keeping his voice steady. Master Jiang did not even try to play it cool. In the world of business, showing that much interest is a death sentence. Fang Yucheng looked like he had a massive headache watching his friend crumble. He knew they were about to overpay, but he also knew they could not let this pill walk out the door. Fang Yucheng said, sighing. If it's reasonable, well, close the deal right now. Su Bai had a number in his head, but he wanted to see what they offered first. Normally, a level 5 pill started at 1 billion. A high-grade version could easily hit 3 or 4 billion. However, this marrow cleansing pill had a catch. It only worked on people who had not awakened their powers yet. For anyone else, it was useless. That usually drove the price down. Fang Yucheng hesitated for a long time studying him. He was not just looking at the pill anymore. He was looking at a teenager who had somehow reached the rank of martial master. If the rumors were true, Su Bai was also likely connected to the strange phenomena that happened yesterday. 30 billion. Fang Yucheng finally said, one lump sum. His internal goal was barely 2 billion. He was offering 10 times what Su Bai expected. Then Su Bai understood the truth. He was not just paying for the medicine. He was paying for him. He was investing in a potential genius before Su Bai became too powerful to reach. His system was a bottomless pit that swallowed money like water. Su Bai needed every bit of cash he could get. Su Bai said, let's do it. He gave him his bank account number, and seconds later, his phone buzzed in his. Su Bai handed over the bottle, and Master Jiang grabbed it like it was a holy relic. He just turned and sprinted toward the back rooms, desperate to start his research. System copy talent, Su Bai thought. Ultimate Alchemist talent copied. 1 million points deducted. 1 million points felt like a bargain for a top-tier talent. As the notification cleared, Master Jiang disappeared into his private lab. Fang Yucheng rubbed his temples, looking embarrassed. Don't mind him, Su Bai, he said. Old Jiang gets like this when he's excited. He's probably going into seclusion to study that pill. If he learns even a fraction of its secrets, he'll finally become a third-rank alchemist. It's fine, Su Bai replied. Su Bai should get going. Take care, he said. Hello. Su Bai walked out of the treasure pavilion feeling like he was in a dream. Just a few days ago, Su Bai was a loser with a blood chi of 2.5. Now, Su Bai was a martial master with billions in the bank, and a system that made him a god. Su decided to just ride the storm and see how far he could go. His phone rang, breaking his train of thought. The caller ID said, Dad. Su Bai took a deep breath. Su Bai never really had a family in his past life, so this was still new to him. Su Xinghao called and ordered Su Bai home immediately, while his worried mother insisted that the Su family might retaliate at any moment. Tell him not to stay outside. The Su family is definitely planning something. Every second he's out there, he's in danger. They were terrified that the Su family would retaliate after what happened at school. Su Bai was on his way, Mom, he said, cutting her off before she could spiral. Su Bai would be there in 10 minutes. Back at the villa, his parents were pacing by the front gate. His mother asked, her eyes wide. He was just a student yesterday. His father tried to look stern, but he could not hide the massive grin on his face. They'll find out when the brat gets here. He's got some nerve keeping this from them. Su Bai was going to give him a piece of his mind. He was so proud he looked like he might burst. Last year's national top student was only a primary martial artist. His son was already a high-level martial master. In his mind, Su Bai was already the national champion. But beneath the pride, Su Bai could see the worry in his eyes. He knew that the stronger Su Bai became, the bigger the target on his back would grow. The Su family would not just sit back and watch him rise. They were going to strike, and they were going to strike hard. His mother kept pacing through the villa, worried that the Su family would strike, before Su Bai reached the protection of a top university. Even though the Su family had not made a move yet, she was terrified. As a mother, her biggest wish was just to see him grow up healthy. His father, Su Xinghao, cleared his throat and tried to sound practical. He agreed that they had to be careful with his safety, at least until the martial exams were over. Once Su Bai was finished, even the Su family would not have the guts to provoke a student headed for a top. To keep things safe, he suggested that he and his mother move into the villa with him for a few. The big competition was tomorrow anyway, so Su Bai did not see the harm. Before night fell, Principal Qin called him. He wanted to go over the rules for tomorrow's grand competition. This was not just a local school event. 3 entire provinces, Zhang Province, Dongyang Province, and Tao Province were teaming up to host it. The event was being held right here in Zhang Province. Cities like Kyoto were too far away to join them. The real purpose of these competitions was not just to see who was the strongest student. Every year, cities fought over education, funding, and cultivation materials. Hundreds of years ago, the Martial Arts Association and the military got tired of the constant arguing. That was how the grand competition started. The rankings decided which province or city would get the lion's share of funding for the next year. It was a brutal system, where the strong got stronger and the weak stayed weak. But in a world where strength was everything, it was the only way people would listen. The official government still preached equality. But ever since the spiritual chi recovery began, the gears of fate were turned by power alone. Tianxi City was usually a ghost in these rankings. Out of hundreds of cities across the 3 provinces, they usually hovered right in the middle, around the top 100. Every few years, they'd get lucky with a student who had an SS-level talent and break into the top. The top 10 spots never changed. Those cities were the crown jewels of the provinces, where all the best teachers and richest families lived. While a normal city might have one SS-level talent who reached primary martial artist, a top-tier city's SS. Usually, the competition was a standard one-on-one arena tournament. But this year, the rules had changed completely. Instead of a ring, they were being thrown into a secret realm for a points-based survival challenge. The military had cleared a safe zone in a newly discovered realm. It was filled with exotic beasts ranging from trainee level to primary martial master level. These beasts were ranked from level 1 to level 9, with each level further split into early, mid, and late. Killing these monsters was the only way to get points. A level 1 beast was worth 1, 3, or 5 points depending on its stage. Level 2 beasts jumped to 10, 30, and 50 points. A single kill was worth 200 points. The massive gap was designed to reward those who dared to fight above their level. This was the first time the country was trying this. They wanted them to experience real bloodshed and understand the true desperation of the human race. They wanted them to become warriors, not just athletes. Of course, they were not sending them in to die. Each of them would be given a distress button before entering. With the new survival rules understood, Su Bai prepared for the secret realm competition, determined to turn his purchased strength into a real victory.